Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the City Council meeting for May 19th, 2008 to order. As always, first thing on the agenda is determination of a quorum. Jackie, if you would, please.
Roy?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Adcock? Here. Hurlbut?
Here.
Key?
Here.
Chapman?
Here.
Weifenbach? Here. Olson? Here. Kroger?
Here.
Quaker?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Next thing, as always, is the invocation, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation tonight will be given by Greg Blanc from the Calvary Chapel Community Church. And if you would please stand, remain standing. And if I could, for our Pledge of Allegiance, we do have some folks from the Rapid Valley Elementary School, so if you could come up, we'll have you start the pledge right after the invocation, okay?
Sure. Let's pray. Father God, I do thank you and praise you for this night. Lord, I thank you for this time and this place. I thank you that we live in a country that's free. And Lord, these men that are standing beside us, I thank you for them. They fought for that, and the men and women that currently fight. I thank you for the men and the women on the council. God, I pray that you will guide their decisions, their choices, check their motives. I thank you for their willingness to serve their communities and their willingness to lead. And so, God, we give you this night, and we pray that what's done here is pleasing to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and thank you. I do want to acknowledge we do have some students here from the Rapid Valley Elementary School. They came and presented the City Council and the Mayor with some letters dealing with recycling. Thank you for that, and also thank you for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If we all could stay that cute. Next thing on the agenda, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. I do have a number of changes, and I'm going to start down the list here, and then we'll ask for additions to that. We do need to take up item number 187 prior to item number 186. We also need to add an item 192A, which is a change order for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. We also need to add a 95A, which is determination of a date for the election canvases. We also have a 95B, which is the Canyon Lake Dam quotes on the quick fix. We also will be adding item 245, 246, and 247 to immediately follow item 181, and that will be taken up on the consent calendar. And then also item 248 will follow item 232. And then we also need to add a 225A, which is the approval of a warp. Anybody else have any other items to add? Yep. Turn your lights on, please. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a brief informational item that I will call multiplying like rabbits.
Okay, we'll just put you down for Bob Hurlbut.
And that would be 195.
195C. Thank you. We also have a light on from Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two items from Alderman. One would be the 2009 budget, and the second one would be public meetings.
And public meetings. Okay. We will add those on as 95D and 95E. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Mine is on the benefit of education for council members.
Education of council. Okay, any additional items to be added to the agenda? Any additional? Not, the chair would look for a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second for approval. Does anybody want me to read back all the changes?
Please.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay, everyone clear on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This time, the chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes of the May 5th and the April 23rd, 2008 informational meeting and the May 5th, 2008 council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Just a couple of reminders, if you have a cell phone or a pager, if you could please turn those off or turn those to vibrate. If it does go off during the meeting, you will find out very quickly that the penalty is you buy donuts for everybody at the following council meeting. So that could get very expensive, considering there's a Krispy Kremes now in town.
Really?
Well, they sell them all over town. Second thing is, if you wish to speak to any item on the agenda, we do have speaker request forms. They're over here on the press table. If you could fill that out and put the agenda number and hand that into Jack at the end of the dais, that way when your item comes up, we'll make sure that we give you the opportunity to get up and speak. That just helps us as we're moving through the meeting. And let's see, we are now on to awards and recognition. Let's see, the first thing we will do is we do have a new city engineer who needs to be sworn in. Mr. Preston, if you could come forward and swear in Mr. Tech. We're going to do this first.
We don't have to abstain from, I thought that was first reading, so we don't have to abstain from that.
Second reading?
Yeah,
This is the second.
that's what I thought it was.
Repeat after me. I state your name. I, Dale Peck. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend.
Yes.
That I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of South Dakota. And the Constitution of the State of South Dakota. Against all enemies. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. Foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. Without any mental reservation. Or for the purpose of evasion. Or for the purpose of evasion. That I will faithfully and impartially perform. That I will faithfully and impartially perform. The duties of city engineer for the city of Rapid City, South Dakota. The duties of city engineer for the city of Rapid City, South Dakota. According to the law. According to the law. And to the best of my ability. And to the best of my ability. So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What I'm trying to figure out is I actually provided 2 copies of that pledge. I'm sort of curious why Jim didn't give you the second one. I think he was testing your engineering ability. Next, we also have the honor of honoring our Veteran of the Month. If I could have Robert come up, please. Let me tell you just a little bit about Robert before we allow him to take the podium. In partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to present the May 2008 Veteran of the Month recognition to Robert J. or Robin Orvik. Robert Orvik was raised in North Dakota and enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1955. He served over 6 years in the United States and overseas. During Robert's military career, he was awarded the Air Force Longevity Medal and the Air Force Good Conduct Medal. After his discharge in 1961, Robert worked various jobs, including building missile sites for the U.S. Air Force as a Boeing engineer. Robert has been a quiet veteran, helping our community in many ways. He has a long history of giving food, clothing, money, time, and effort for those in need. He is a strong supporter of veterans and has aided many over the years. He performs work for free for several local churches, including assisting the Black Hills Children's Home, the Crazy Horse Memorial, or just helping someone in need. Robin Orbick exemplifies a true veteran. He is a passionate, caring man who extends the quiet hand of help from one human being to another. Thank you so much for your service, and God bless. Now I'm going to give you the opportunity to come up and say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A public speaker, I'm not. I just want to say thank you. It's great working with all the people that I have worked with. And again, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a real honor. Thank you. This is yours. Why don't you come over here and we'll get a picture? We're also very honored to give a Community Service Award. If I could ask all the members that are present of the VFW 1273 Honor Guard, if you could come up, please. I'll just go ahead and just come on right around here, you guys. Okay, we got everyone there? Very good. Well, it's a true honor because tonight, in participation and partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to recognize the VFW Post 1273 Honor Guard with the Veterans Community Service Award. The VFW Honor Guard was formed in 1958 in order to render military honors to members of the organization who had died. Within a few years, the VFW Honor Guard has expanded its services to include any veteran whose family requests such honors. In 50 years since its formation, over 5,000 funerals have been attended and honors rendered. The VFW Guard has traveled throughout western South Dakota at no expense to the families or the survivors. Over 30 men and women throughout 50 years have performed these final honors as an unpaid volunteer. They have traveled thousands of miles in their own vehicles to see that their own have been given proper military honors and a final salute. The Veterans of Foreign War Post 1273 Honor Guard exemplifies self-sacrifice, dedication, and community service to the highest standard. With the exception of the weapons and the ammunition which is provided by the federal government, this post and the individuals who form this elite organization pay for their own equipment, drive their own vehicles, and take time from their work and from their families to see that every veteran of any period of service receives their last military honors. No man or woman veteran, however mean their circumstances, is denied their last honors to their service to this great nation. It is a true pleasure and an honor for me to recognize these folks that really do exemplify what it means to be a veteran. Gentlemen, thank you. Let's say I'll point this direction. Why don't you say a few words if you would?
Come on, Joe.
Well, I just joined the VFW about a couple of years ago, and I appreciate everything you guys done for us. And on behalf of all the guys here, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Who wants to hold it? We're going to take a picture. Why don't we double up here so we get everybody in the frame? And if I could just ask maybe the council sort of gather behind us, if you would. I think it's one more time for I think it's certainly appropriate to make sure we recognize it.
Come here, Grandpa. You go there.
Front and center, chap.
Hug your buddy.
Okay, is everyone ready?
We're all looking at different cameras. Mm-hmm. One of the widest lens.
I'd like that. Thank you, sir.
For me, anyway. Marv. When you gonna call?
Thank you.
Okay. I am. 716-6210. 6210.
Why don't you go ahead, okay? This coming May 26th at 8 o'clock, it will have our Memorial Day ceremony at Memorial Park. I understand it's going to be at the bandstand this year. We invite all citizens, and I'd like to invite the City Council and the Mayor to come out. We'd love to have you out. Please join us to honor our veterans, today's veterans and our past veterans. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wait, thinned out, didn't it?
Where's Dan? Dan, you want to come on up? Where's the chief? This is one of those times that we have the pleasure of honoring a long-term employee of the city of Rapid City. Dan has been with us 21 years, and Chief, if you could just give us a little bit of background, and I know you're fairly new here, but give us your impressions.
And again, as the mayor said, it is an honor. Dan's been with us for about 20 years, 9 months. Started September 28th in 1987. He spent the last 10 years in our prevention bureau, and before that worked in a suppression. He was a dive team member, a hazmat member, a rescue team member, and he also is, and that's why we can't let him go altogether, he is the individual who coordinates all our trips to Germany to Apolda when the fire department guys go and when the German folks come here. So, congratulations, Dan.
You want to come up, Dan? First of all, I just realized I didn't tell you what Dan's last name was, Ladenberger. So with that, Dan, if you'd say a few words for us.
I'd like to thank you for allowing me to work for the city for the past almost 21 years. It's been the most enjoyable career that I've ever had, and it was something new and interesting every day, and I just thought that it was enjoyable. I hope I made a difference in the city with the different things we attempted to do, and once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Good moving, Chief. Get a chief on the move, huh?
We also have a recognition for Lynn Stather. I'm going to get your name right. I'm sorry about that, Lynn. It's one of those tough ones. She has been with us for 20 years. And to just tell us a little bit about Lynn, Brian Molinsky, our Civic Center manager.
Thank you. Lynn has been with us for 20 years at the Civic Center. She's been a tremendous asset, a tremendous employee for the Civic Center and the City of Rapid City for 20 years. She does everything for us at the Civic Center. She'll be in there at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday counting money during the Black Hill Stock Show and Rodeo. She's in there at 10 or 11 o'clock at night working a concert with us, putting together all the settlements. She handles our bill list. She handles employee payroll. She's a true jack of all trades, and she's been a tremendous employee to have for us. She's been a good friend to us at the Civic Center. And one of the things we enjoy most about Lynn is when she's scheduled, we know not only is she going to be there, but we know the job that she's been assigned will be done right. So congratulations, Lynn.
Brian just got one thing wrong. I'm not there at 6 a.m. because I'm not a morning person. But it has truly been an honor and a pleasure to work for the city. It doesn't seem like it's been 20 years. Every day is a new day, so.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Next thing on our agenda, as always, is the general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting tonight on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the city council members present. Is there anyone from the public that has any comments on an item not on the agenda? Very good. We will move on. We are on to the non-public hearing items. This is items 4 through 95. And just a reminder, we are also going to be taking up items 245, 246, and 247 during this period. So if there are any public comments, please make sure that on those items, please include that. Chair would look for a motion to open the public comment on items 4 through 81 and items 45, 46, and 247.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Just for clarification, I believe the motion is for items 4 through 181, plus the additional items listed.
That is correct. Yep. 4 through 181, and items 245, 246, and 247. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are in the public comment period. We do not have, I'm looking here, we have a speaker request form on item 153. Was it 152 from Russell Ombre? Whoops, Russell's, you're item 152 or 153?
152.
Okay, very good. Please identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Russ Aubrey. I'm a member of the Roosevelt Park Committee. Roosevelt Park watch members feel that Roosevelt Park is an asset to our community and benefits all people. We should appreciate the vote from the city council members on adding the $60,000 from the 2012 money for options 1 and 4 of the park improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We also have a speaker request form on item 152 from Roger Heacock.
Thank you. I am Roger Heacock, board member on Skyline Drive Preservation. Chuck Tinnett is also here as the president of the board. We are not here to comment unless you have questions for us when we talk about the 2 acres that Skyline owns. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from a Chuck Tinnett, item 152.
Yes, I'm Chuck Tinnett. I, like Roger, am here just to answer any questions that you may have of us on the Skyline project. So, thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Sandra Swan on item number 159. There again, ma'am, if you just identify yourself for your record, please.
Thank you. I'm Sandra Schwan. I'm the class representative for the 2007 Leadership Rapid City class, and we are organizing the Summer Nights event, and I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have of our project.
Thank you. Seeing no further speaker request forms, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to taking up the consent calendar. This is items 4 through 181. And is there anyone that would like to have any items removed from the consent calendar? I am showing we need to remove 162 and 181. 162 and 181. Additions to that, Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. 152, please.
152. Let's go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 153 and 154.
153 and 154. Very good. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 151.
151. Very good. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 159, please.
159. Very good. So far, I have items to be pulled from the consent calendar. Items 151, 152, 153, 154, 159, 162, and 181. Any additions? Any additions? Just a reminder that we will be taking up also items 245 and 246 and 247, which is an addendum. Basically, this is just a set for hearing for liquor licenses. But I just want to make sure everyone's clear that those are included on the consent calendar. Okay? If not, the chair would look for a motion. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go to Mr. Jim Preston, our city finance officer.
My apologies, Mayor. Thank you for recognizing me. 248, which was the for malt beverage license for Laurel Harkins. I did.
248 will be later on the
Okay.
agenda.
All right.
Yep.
My mistake.
That
Thank
is
you.
actually a hearing. We can't take that up on the consent. So that's added later on. Okay. If not, the chair would look for a motion for approval of the consent calendar, item 4 through 181, and including, in addition to the items 245, 246, and 247, with the exception of 151, 152, 153, 154, 159, 162, and 181. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item 151, please.
151 is to approve establishing a life safety fund to provide low-interest loans to businesses required to install a sprinkler system in their structure. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it was important for the general public to realize an important step that several branches of government have taken, which should assist in redevelopment and has particular significance for those of us who are working on revitalizing downtown. This was brought forward, I think, originally by Chief Shepard, and was forwarded by our city attorney, and Mr. Preston and Pauline Sumption from the finance office, all of whom realized that it is a challenge for property owners with older buildings when they wish to do something that then requires sprinkling of their building for safety purposes. And while we all believe that life safety issues are of utmost importance, we also understand the financial burden that this sometimes can pose for people who have an older building that for one reason or another no longer meets fire code and therefore requires a sprinkling. So I just thought it was important for the general public and for those in the community who are looking at older buildings that need some kind of changes to realize that the city has been very forthcoming and has taken a very positive step forward to enable this low-interest program to allow some additional support of those who are taking an important step in remodeling or, in some cases, changing use of older buildings. And so I wanted to thank these folks for this important, in my view, life safety issue, but also balanced with the needs of those who are making those changes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a question of somebody that serves on legal finance. Recently, we had a discussion regarding private sewer lines, and we made a decision that we were going to have an ordinance as opposed to a resolution. And I see that this is coming forward in a resolution form. Is there a reason why we have a resolution as opposed to drafting an ordinance? Just a question for those.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council directed an ordinance on the sewer line issue, and I believe that's on your agenda today. This one could be done as an ordinance also. The recommendation from the committee was to do it simply as a resolution. If the council would prefer it to be in the form of an ordinance, we could certainly redraft it.
Alderman Johnson, you still have the floor, sir.
I like some consistency. I would prefer an ordinance, and it takes 2 votes and gets some public scrutiny. If the council is more comfortable with the resolution, I'm okay with that too. But just to try and float this, I would move to a substitute motion to direct the city attorney's office to prepare an ordinance regarding the life safety fund.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to direct the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance and bring this item back to the next Legal and Finance Committee. Is that correct, Mr. Johnson? Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 152, please.
152 is to approve the 2012 funding for the Roosevelt Park improvements for $60,000 and the Rapid City Bus Storage Facility, Police Evidence, Traffic Transit Building for $280,000, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Mr. Mayor, I would offer a substitute motion to include an additional $39,430.25 to be given to Skyline Preservation to complete the purchase of the Skyline property.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and it is, I got to think about this, I'm not sure it's going to be a substitute motion or amendment to the motion. Let's go to Jason Green just for clarification.
It would be more appropriate to construe this as an amendment to the main motion and vote solely on the addition of the funds for Skyline.
Okay, one other quick question. We do have a couple other lights up here. Question for the city finance officer, and that is, since we do not have an identified funding source, is this, I guess I'm going to go to Jason Green. We don't have an identified funding source as we do. We're okay with that? Okay, very good. Let's go to the lights. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I understand all of the details and the background information why this for Skyline Drive is coming forward. I guess my question is a procedural one. At Legal and Finance, we purposely separated the Skyline Drive conversation from the rest of the conversation, and we sent that motion to a meeting of Legal and Finance later this month. It would seem to me that somehow we're doing something out of order here if now we're taking up something that we've already directed to go to a meeting later this month, and I'd like for our city attorney to comment on that.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chapman is correct. That was a part of the item that was before the Legal and Finance Committee, and that committee separated the two items you see today from the other two items that were associated with it. They've forwarded the recommendation to the council at this time to deal with the two they've made a recommendation on. I believe it's appropriate for the council, if it desires, to make additions or deletions to the recommendation from the Legal and Finance Committee. That's not always the case. In this particular instance, though, that the funds for Skyline Drive are distinct from the rest of the items that are on this particular request. So if the council wants to add it today, you can. When it comes back up on Legal and Finance, as it will, it would simply be moot at that point, and the recommendation would be to table.
Okay. Let's see. Alderman Chapman, you still have the floor, sir. Anything else?
I do have a question for the Skyline, but I can wait.
Okay, very good. Just a reminder, the motion on the floor is a motion to amend, and that's, we have a very lengthy agenda, so please keep your comments to the motion to amend, and if that motion passes, then we can come back and discuss and debate the original motion as amended. So if you have any discussion on the amendment motion, let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you. Because we're just discussing a motion to amend, I'm going to reserve my comments other than to urge my colleagues to allow this to be amended so we can then discuss the issue. Thank you.
Very good. Let's see. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, I will not be supporting the amendment on the floor. As Alderman Chapman stated at Legal and Finance, we decided to take this off, and we really have not had the appropriate discussion either at the 2012 committee meeting or at Legal and Finance regarding this item. So I would urge that we do not support the amendment and go back to our original motion, which was to approve just the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe it's appropriate for the council to act on this evening. We did have a discussion regarding 2012. This particular item, the Legal Finance is a recommending body to the council. Ultimately, the council makes the final decision, and I would just encourage council members to approve this amendment and then approve the motion as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've just got one question. Is this budgeted in 2012?
Let's go to Mr. Jim Preston. Do you understand the question, sir? Question is this a budgeted item in the 2012? I believe that was your question. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the short answer would be it is not. It was the same as the other two items are on there. The spreadsheet was shared with the 2012 committee and the council as far as where we're at financially and where the balance is. But when you say budget, was it placed in the 2008 budget? No, it was not.
Thank you. Mr. Krepke, you still have the floor, sir. Okay. Let's go to Alderman Bob. Let's see. Before we come back to Alderman Hurlbut, I do need to go to a couple of folks that haven't had the opportunity to speak. So let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to be supporting the motion on the floor either because I don't, out of respect for the legal finance, they wanted to continue on for more discussion, and I think that's the way what we should respect their wishes. So I'm going to vote no for the motion on the floor and wait till it follows the process through legal and finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we can go back around. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to whether this was a budgeted item, I'm not sure what year it was in the budget under the 2012 program, but it was budgeted at $800,000, of which only $737,000 was used. So this was already in the 2012 plan. The problem was there was a mistake in calculating the amount of back taxes that needed to be paid, which resulted in a shortfall of what is now $39,000 some odd dollars. So this has been a budgeted item. I believe it probably would have been in the year 2005, if I'm not mistaken. So I would urge my colleagues to say that this does not need further vetting. This is just correcting a mistake and basically closing up the deal and getting 2 more acres out of the deal.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Whoops, if I can get the buttons right.
Actually, the subcommittee decided that they wanted $800,000 on this item, and the city council only gave them $737,000, even though at this time we did go over budget already, which was $737,145. So the subcommittee recommended $800,000, but the city council recommended $737,000. But on this item, I don't have a heartache either way. I know in legal and finance, it was something we had discussed, but I think in the end, my vote will probably be for the $38,000, but I could go either way on this. It's not a heartache for me.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I have some, not concerns, but I'm struggling a little bit because I've seen this 2012 process, or at least this round, from beginning through where we are today. And the subcommittee that was formed by the council, as well as the 2012 committee as a whole, kind of made it clear that, you know, the groups that came forward would get what they got. And that was the very first check that was cut from the 2012 this round was $737,000, and as Deb said, maybe a little bit more. I guess I'm wondering how we get to this point where there are more taxes due, because I thought part of that agreement or arrangement was that the city, through the 2012 process, would pay the brunt of that, what was remaining, and that organization that existed would then take the taxes. Now, I guess I'm understanding that that group was told that they didn't have to pay taxes 1 year, and because of some miscalculation on the county's portion, that we find out now there are taxes due for that year. I guess my question is, does that group have any money that they raise toward taxes, and would it be appropriate to split the cost of $38,000? And this is a question maybe for someone from the Skyline Drive group.
Okay.
And then I have a follow-up question as well. Just what's the intent once that's paid, once the taxes are paid and it's free and clear? Is the intent then to turn that over to the city, or what happens after that?
Okay, there's 2 questions here, Mr. Heacock. Number 1, would the Skyline Preservation Society be willing to split? And the second is, if the city agrees to help pay for those back taxes, the disposition of that property, would that come to the city? If you could address those 2 issues only, please.
Thank you. As far as your first question, that would put quite a financial burden on us. Once we turned the bulk of the land over to the city.
Oh, Mr. Heacock, and I apologize. At this point, it's strictly a question and answer. We don't let people actually go beyond the question that was originally asked. And so if you could answer also the second question, and that was the disposition of the property if the city made some funding available. Would that become part of the city?
Absolutely, immediately.
Okay, very good, thank you. Mr. Chapman, you still have the floor.
Thank
Okay. Okay, let's go to, I see a number of lights here. Let's try and work our way through this for about another 5-10 minutes, and then quite honestly, then we'll figure out what we're going to do with this. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sit on the Legal and Finance Committee, and one of the reasons that I think I made the motion originally to continue this item is because I didn't understand it. I have a little bit better understanding tonight, but for the sake of my colleagues, I think that it would be fair to them to give them the opportunity to bring it back through the process of Legal and Finance so we can understand the process. Otherwise, we're going to hash it out here tonight. I don't know that my position will change, but I do think out of the respect of the colleagues on the dais here that this item was continued at Legal and Finance. If it comes back in 2 weeks, I don't think it's going to make a big difference on the impact of what happens, but it will give us an opportunity for the Skyline people to get their information together, bring it to the city at the Legal and Finance Committee as the process dictates, and from that point we can move forward. So I'm hoping that that'll alleviate some of the lights that we have on tonight if we just move forward with it, kill this motion and move on.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
I would like to correct one thing that's been said, which is that we would be paying the taxes on this property. My understanding is, and Roger and Chuck Tennant can certainly speak to this if I've interpreted this incorrectly, the taxes on this property have been paid in total, including the year that was in question. And it was done by mortgaging one piece of the property, which is a 2-acre piece. And what essentially is happening here is the mortgage is being paid through this vehicle. And the mortgage was taken out because there was a very small window of opportunity because of the mistake that had been in regard to whether or not the taxes for 2006, 2007 needed to be paid. There was an understanding initially that because of the exchange of entities, it wasn't necessary. So I want to make it clear to my colleagues, all of the taxes on the property have been paid, and if Mr. Heacock disagrees, he should say so.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I believe we ought to continue this item to Legal and Finance to have these discussions. This item has been before this council probably at least 8 years, and we have had a lot of discussion on it. And during the 2012 process, I can't remember all of that discussion we had with them, but they were to pay the interest and everything on the loans that they had on that property, and then we were going to purchase the property for them. And I thought that's what we did. And now all of a sudden we have a 2-acre parcel hanging out there. We're talking about interest. We're talking all kinds of different things. And after at least 8 years of discussion on this property, to breeze it through in a heartbeat, I don't think is appropriate. Not to say that I'm against the project. I supported the last purchase, and I'll probably support this. But as a person that's been on this council during all those conversations that we've had over the years, I'm at a loss to actually what's going on right now. So I would ask that we continue this item until Legal and Finance and get it ironed out. And another 2 weeks is certainly not going to create a problem. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up very short. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Based on the information that I've heard, I will continue this as well in respect for the Legal and Finance as well as for the information in the process of 2012. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Is this going to be a cause of hardship by postponing it a couple weeks? Then in support, the answer was no, by the way. So in support of the Legal and Finance myself, I've been struggling with this thing whether I was going to support it or not, but in the effort of supporting my other colleagues, I think I'm going to continue this as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in the motion on the floor is to amend the motion to include the $38,000 roughly for the Skyline project. So that is what we're voting on. We're voting on the amendment to the motion. Everyone clear on that? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion fails with 2 noes, is that correct? Let's do a roll call real quick, just, was it 2 noes? Okay, 2 noes, Alderman Karen Olson and,
2 ayes.
do a roll call, please.
Motion to amend.
No.
Aye.
Adcock.
No.
Hurlbut.
Aye.
McCrepke.
No. It's more than 2.
Chapman.
No.
Wyffenbach. Olson. Kroger. Quaker.
No.
What do you got, 7-3?
Yes.
Motion failed on a 7-3 vote. We're back to the original motion. Further discussion on the original motion, which is to approve the 2012 funding for the Roosevelt Park improvements for $60,000 and the Rapid City Bus Storage facility, which is the PET building, for $280,000. Discussion on the original motion. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
Just want a big thank you to the Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Watch and the Parks and Recreation, who has put a lot of time in revitalizing Roosevelt Park. Thank you very much, both to these organizations.
Thank you. Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I think just for clarity of the minutes, the motion should be, as it's written on the agenda, to approve the funding as an amendment to the 2012 plan, because that is really the action the council is taking tonight.
Very good. It's not actually how it shows up on the agenda, though.
The
Okay, is that all right with the motion maker?
Let's continue it.
Okay, and the second. Okay, very good. The motion on the floor is to approve with the revised language per our city attorney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 153, please.
Aren't you glad I stamped my foot?
Number 153 is acknowledged report on snow removal.
Motion, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Wyffenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping that in our packet that Robert Ellis would have put it. Is it in here? I had searched for it, but I couldn't find it. But I just wanted to, I wanted to give a public thank you to the mayor, the public works director, and all the personnel and the staff and the contractors that were hired that handled this blizzard in the utmost professional manner. I think that sometimes the credit's not given when due. I think these people left their families at 3 o'clock in the morning, got out, shoveled snow. Sometimes you take your life in your own hands when you're out there with the snow plows, plowing the snow. And again, I just wanted to thank them for the professional job that they did. And if that information's in your packet, it'll show you how many man hours it took the city, how many man hours it took contractors and things like that. And at the same time, I'm hoping maybe we can attach that to the agenda to actually get the real message out there, what really happens when we have a spring blizzard. So, thank you.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to acknowledge the report. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 154, please.
154 is to acknowledge discussion on 2009 budget.
We have a motion and a second to acknowledge the report on the 2009 budget. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Ron Wyffenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item I brought forward at the beginning of the meeting too, so we'll be able to scratch that one.
Okay.
I understand after the Legal and Finance meeting that the mayor is moving forward with the budget at a timelier fashion than we were proposed with it last year. I understand that last year was my first year on the budget. I had several questions and that I didn't believe at that time were answered sufficiently. I just want to be prepared this time around, and I want my colleagues to be prepared. And I truly want everyone to understand that we had a lot of items that came forward that were outside the general budget. We ended up raising property taxes on the properties in the city, and I wanted to let everybody know at this point forward that I'm not interested in doing that this year. I am interested in funding the general budget. I do have some concerns about ongoing items that were going to be told that they had to find their own funding sources in the future. And I'm willing to make those political stances if so be to bring this budget within the realm without having to raise property taxes this year. I believe that the Rapid City has, we spend a lot of money on surveys and studies and what we call the Condra study to hire some of the best professional staff in the city. We try to make sure that they have a good work environment. We make sure that they're paid well, and we take pride in the staff that we have. The city council is tasked to sign off on that budget at the end of the budget cycle. With that in mind, I would like to have input and from the city staff that we have hired that are at the professional level. I would like to be able to approach that up front before the budget's done by, asking a few simple questions that I can prepare in the future, but just how we can look at synergizing items in different departments, how we can look at saving the taxpayers some money, looking at the priorities and making sure they match with the priorities of the city. Obviously that we are tasked with basically providing services for the city, and the services for the city cost money. So the council is tasked with the question of how much services do we provide, in what realm of what budget we provide. And that happens if you're providing more services and you're bringing in revenue. The one way you correct that is raising taxes. I'm not interested in that particular area. The other is to look at where we are spending our money and taking a real hard look and leaning on the highly professional people that we've hired, that we make sure have a good work environment and are paid properly. And I think it's time to lean on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a remark, but I think seeing as how the budget is probably the most important piece of legislation we pass, and we're acknowledging a report that the folks that serve on the Public Works Committee were not privy to. Can we have just a brief synopsis of what the discussion was and how this is going to be brought forward? Not asking for the full discussion, but just a brief discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
I'll wait to ask my question until after Alderman Johnson has had the answer to his.
Alderman Johnson, I apologize. I wasn't sure there was a question in there. Can you?
There was a question. We acknowledged discussion on 2009 budget. I assume that we had some discussion of when the presentation times were when the council would receive this. I would be asking for that brief information tonight if there was. If not, I'm not sure what we're acknowledging, other than the fact that we'll have our usual spirited discussion around the budget. Maybe that was what
I think I can enter. There wasn't anything specific, but the question was to ask at Legal and Finance. It's my intent to actually come back the first part of July, present the mayor's budget to you, trying to give you additional time to actually look at that. And my understanding is the council, there again very preliminarily, is looking at somewhere around, I think, July 23rd to start the budgetary process, to give them a little bit more time this year. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I think what we
I'm sorry. Deb, forgive me. I'm going to go back to Sam Quaker.
Good.
And then we'll come back to you. I'm sorry, Alderman
okay.
Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if there was any discussion on the scheduling and if there would be evening hearings or day hearings, or but I didn't know if Kay or Malcolm or someone would be contacting the council to find out preferences at the appropriate time.
Malcolm Chapman, our City Council President.
We didn't have that discussion at Legal and Finance. The report that I guess we're acknowledging is really the comments made by Alderman Weifenbach. We didn't set the timetable yet, even though we're trying to look at some dates. Like the mayor said, he would make a presentation sometime early July, and then probably the third week of July is what we were looking at. And I haven't had a chance to visit with Kay, but as soon as I will this week, and we can get some tentative dates out to the council so we can start to get it into our schedule.
Anything else? Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor. Very good. Now let's go back to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I understood where Ron was coming from, and I understand some of the things that being new he is going through, and some of the things that he's seeing on the budget. My question to some of the people on the council is, if you want to change policy procedure on some of the items, that's the time to say it and do it. It's not after the fact and then bring up that we haven't made changes or haven't done anything about these policies and procedures. If you say no to the budget, you are saying to no to many things on the budget, and I think that was the point. If you want to make changes on our budget, it's time to do it then, change the policy and procedures, and live with what 9 people or 10 people have decided on the council. So I guess that was one of the issues as well, Alderman Tom Johnson and Mr. Weifenbach's comments on how our policy and procedure is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge the discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 159, please.
159 is to approve event permit for summer nights to close 7th Street between Main Street and St. Joseph Street from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. on June 12th, June 19th, June 26th, July 3rd, July 10th, July 17th, July 24th, July 31st, and August 7th, August 14th, August 21st, and August 28th. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge that this was a project by the class of the Leadership Rapid City class of 2007. And those classes, every class of Leadership Rapid City has been tasked with coming up with a project that impacts the community in a positive light. And I just want to applaud the class of 2007 for being creative in terms of how they thought they could impact the community. I was part of some of those discussions, and they had a lot of different things on the table, and they narrowed it down to this. And I don't think this is all that they're going to do, but this is the first attempt at impacting the community in a positive way. As a side note, I just want to say that there are 30 students that are selected for Leadership Rapid City every year. 1/6 of those students last year were Rapid City employees. Brian Blenner, Peter Ragnon, Dustin Willett, Joel Landine, and Pauline Sumption. And I just applaud the city on seeing, being visionary enough to think that they could impact the community by allowing people to go to these leadership classes, which take about 12 or 13 weeks, giving up Thursday evenings, a retreat one weekend, and then an all day on a Friday to think about how people become better educated to impact their communities in a positive way. So I just applaud the city and those departments that saw fit for those folks to apply and be accepted and go through that process. And then kudos to the Leadership Rapid City class of 2007.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman or Alderperson. Somebody's flashing his light. Let's go to Alderperson Bill Okrepke.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I certainly would appreciate and applaud the efforts of the leadership group there as well. I think doing this is going to bring some life and revitalization to our downtown, which we can always use. And I think this is going to make a positive impact and a positive difference for our community and our downtown. So I applaud you, and I'm glad to see that somebody's taking the bull by the horns on this and making some changes and making some difference. And hopefully we can keep this going. Thank you.
Next, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you. That was a great acknowledgement. I also, with Bill and Malcolm, appreciate the efforts of the downtown and this group as well. Sandra, we appreciate your heading this up. Sandra Swan, we appreciate what you're doing for the downtown, and it's one of the goals of the City Council to revitalize and make a difference in downtown, and this is one more step. We thank you as a City Council and the liaison for downtown. Thank you, Sandra, and your group.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion on the floor is for approval of an event permit for summer nights. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We are on to item 162, please.
162 is the approved resolution and knowledge staffing reorganization plan, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Just for the council's information, I asked to have this pulled. I had made a commitment to the council that we would not look at doing any additional staffing until budget. So the chair would actually ask for a motion to table this so we can actually discuss this during budget.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for tabling. No discussion on tabling motions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, and my apologies, that should not have been on our agenda. Let's see, we're on to item 181, please.
180. 181 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for a preliminary plat on lots 1, 2, and 3 of Mall Drive subdivision, located north of East Mall Drive and Dakota Craft Drive. I move. Now you got me doing it, Mayor. I continue to June 2nd at the applicant's request.
We have a motion and a second to continue this item to the June 2nd, 2008 City Council meeting at the applicant's request. Discussion on the motion. Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
I just need to clarify for the council that originally this had been recommended for approval with stipulations. The applicants asked for this to be continued, and we concur.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion. Continuation motion to 6/2 of 08. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That is the end of our consent calendar. We are on to the public comment period on items 182 through 195. Chair will look for a motion to open the public comment period. Motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are in the public comment period on items 182 through 195. We do have one speaker request form from Sean Casey on item number 190. Sean, just for the record, if you could please identify yourself.
Okay. And this is a place I talk about it, not at the...
Yes.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, we do have our lights as always, so there's 3 minutes, and just watch for the yellow and the red. We don't
Okay.
want to cut you short.
Okay. I sent an email to this is Sean Casey with Epic Outdoor Advertising, mostly speaking as a taxpayer tonight, I guess. I sent an email to the council. I have some sheets to hand out as well. Should I do that?
Yes, if you want to hand them,
thing.
give them to Lloyd there.
Well, not the best public speaker in the world, so I'm going to do a little reading here. Hopefully keep it short. I understand that my speaking up on this issue, this is regarding the new multi-purpose arena and the signage proposals out there between Daktronics and Epic. My speaking up today is being billed a little bit as sour grapes, I hear, but keep in mind we haven't really been told we lost yet. I just want the council to be aware of a few things. I'm here today to make sure everyone realizes the amount of future sponsor revenue at stake in this new arena. We think it should bring in about $700,000 a year. I think you're all intimately aware of the fallout from the escalating costs on this center. And we want you to just keep an eye on the ball when it comes to this recurring revenue that this arena should produce from sponsor advertising. We basically have two competing schools of thought, in my opinion. One is the taxpayers want to see this arena bring in as much revenue as possible on a yearly basis to offset the operating costs. We have been informed that the Rapid City Rush hockey team is partnering up with Daktronics to do some sales in this arena. The one school of thought is the taxpayers want to bring in money. In my opinion, the second school of thought is the Rush wants to limit the competition from the city so they can make more revenue off their signs near the ice or on the ice. It's really that simple. Rapid City's building a wonderful arena that sponsors want to advertise in via permanent signage. This sort of signage scares the heck out of the hockey team. We've learned that through 4 months of negotiating. That's the simple part, and how we got here is quite a bit more confusing, but you have lights there, and I have a second page there for you to read the details of a chronology of how we were treated throughout this process. In a nutshell, we feel we were treated unfairly by being forced by Maliski and Mr. Davis, the Civic Center board, to divulge our work to the Rush, only to have them magically appear as a competitor in the end. What I want to talk about tonight is the fact this arena should generate a large amount of money, and it should not be a backdoor subsidy to the Rush, limiting the arena signage competition. I have a major problem with that as a taxpayer. The winner of this proposal needs to guarantee at least $400,000 a year in sponsor revenue, as we were going to as well. Anything else is to shift public money from a venue to a private entity. You need that sponsorship guarantee. If that's your goal, to subsidize the Rush, let it be known. I've been told this is maybe not a city council issue or a mayor issue. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Seeing no additional speaker request forms on items 182 through 195, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
Motion and a second to close public comment period. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the non-consent items, items 182 through 195. Let's start with item number 182, please.
182 is the first reading in ordinance number 5388 to provide for sharing the costs of replacing certain private sewer lines, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The title on the agenda doesn't reflect the title of the ordinance, and it's a requirement of state law that the title of the ordinance be read. So I'll just read that for the council. The title is an ordinance to adopt a policy for the city to participate in the cost of bringing private, non-conforming water and sewer service lines up to current standards by adding a new chapter to Title 13 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Very good. Is that all right with the motion maker and the seconder to include that in the motion? Okay, very good. Discussion on the motion. The motion is for approval of first reading. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Karen Olsen.
Jason, my question is for Jason Green, our city attorney. When we use the word, it says private non-conforming water and sewer service lines. So those two words are to carry the same message about the fact that this is a sewer line that belongs to private individuals.
Let's go to.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Jason Green, city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important to include both those words because this ordinance will apply to non-conforming service lines. Virtually every user of the system has a service line, and that is a private service line by the terms of our ordinance. But some service lines provide service to more than one homeowner, and those are still private even though more than one person uses them. So it's necessary to describe these as private and non-conforming.
Okay. Karen, you still have the floor, ma'am? Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've talked about this for a long time now. My question would be for Mr. Green, and my question would be, how do we communicate to the people that have these private lines that they do have private lines? I think that's important for me to move forward with this.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The ordinance requires the Public Works Department to identify all of these private non-conforming lines throughout the city and to develop a prioritized list of which ones need attention first. In addition, the ordinance requires that the Public Works Director notify each of the property owners by first-class mail of the fact that they have a private non-conforming line. The list will be maintained here at City Hall as a document that's open to public inspection.
Okay, Ron, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Green. The other question I had was, could this be posted on the web under Public Works items?
Let's go to Jason Green, city attorney.
I don't see any reason why it couldn't. I'm not technically savvy enough to know how to do that, but I believe we have people here who are.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Green. I'm sure we have someone that can do that. So, thanks.
Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Good questions, Ron Weifenbach. I appreciate that. This has been a priority in my ward and others' wards, and it's a very important priority, and I thank Jason Green and the Public Works Department, Robert Ellis and his group, that have found a solution with this because it is a big solution for our ward. So I thank you and your departments that have done the work on this. Mayor Hanks has helped us on this situation as well, and we appreciate your help, Mayor Hanks, on this particular issue.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say this has been a long and kind of painful road to get to this point, but it's worked out. There's been a lot of meetings and a lot of different items gone through this. It's been to CIP, it's been to Public Works and Legal Finance. And so there's been great discussion on it, and it's come a long ways. And I think we hit the point where we wanted to be, and I'm in support of the motion. Thank you.
Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval of first reading. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and as revised language to be included as per our city attorney. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 183, please.
183 is the first reading of ordinance number 5389 and ordinance amended section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Jamie Carpenter for rezoning from the neighborhood commercial district to medium density residential district located at 4144 Haynes Avenue. And this deny without prejudice at the applicant's request.
We have a motion and second to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 184, please.
184 is the first reading of ordinance number 5391, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the city of Rapid City for a rezoning from no-use district to public district located north of West Nike Road and east of Cobalt Drive. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 185, please.
185 is the second reading of ordinance number 5387, amended and restated ordinance number 3399, ordinance relating to parking improvements, creating special funds and accounts for administration of the monies derived therefrom, authorizing and directing their insurance and its sale of revenue bonds to pay the cost of improvements to the municipal parking system, and defining the terms and manner of the payment of the bonds and the security thereof. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Just to point the council, there is should be some information within your packets on the top from the City Finance Office. It's labeled item 185, I believe. And with that, we will recognize Jim Preston, our City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, in your packet, there is a letter with an attachment. The long and short of it is requesting that the paragraph 905 be changed how it is on the second page of that letter. The brief explanation of reason why I'm asking that is essentially would give us more time to decide whether we should sell these bonds as bank qualified or as non-bank qualified. There is an advantage, somewhat of a financial advantage by selling them bank qualified, but if we sell them bank qualified and we should have sold them as non-bank qualified, then the city could be subject to some penalties. So that's the long and short of it. There is a letter that I've tried to explain as much as I could in that letter without overwhelming you with information, but that is the long and the short of it. Thank you, Mayor.
Let's see if there's any discussion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. At committee, I asked for if more information could be brought forward relating to the use of fine monies to repay the bond, and I understand that that the fine monies aren't directly being used to pay off the bond, and I think there was some misconception and misunderstanding on that at first. And if I could just have clarification as to the fine monies and where those monies go, Jason, perhaps you could answer that. Where
Jason.
those monies go, and if any of those funds find their way back into the bond repayment process.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take my best stab at it, and Mr. Preston may need to correct me, but it's my understanding that all of the fine money is deposited in what's called the PL&A fund, along with other revenues that are generated from the parking structures and the parking facilities that the city owns. Those revenues are pledged to back the bonds. It's also my understanding that when the bond issuers and the underwriters look at how much money we can repay with those funds, what they're principally looking at are the leases that we have outstanding with people to lease parking spaces in the facilities, the various parking lots in the downtown area, the parking ramp. I don't think that they put a lot of credence on the fine money simply because it is so variable and it's difficult to project as a reliable revenue source.
Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. You still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could just get a breakdown of of that fund. I don't need it tonight, obviously, but if the council could just have a a breakdown of the fund, historically, maybe going back a year or two. I'd just like to see how the various pieces are broken out.
Okay, very good. Mr. Preston, could you make sure that that information is brought forward at the next Legal and Finance and Public Works meeting? Okay, very good. Mr. Preston, did you have your light on, sir?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Mr. Green answered or made most of the comments that I did, but essentially the bottom line is when the underwriters look at all the revenue sources for this particular area to pay the bonds back. I do have the breakout for 2007, but if you'd like me to have put that down in a letter for the council, I'll do that and forward that.
Okay, is that all right? Okay, very good. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Whoops. Jason snuck in there. Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, the motion is for approval with the language suggested by the finance officer. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm looking at the motion maker. Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to Legal and Finance Committee items. We do need to take item number 187 prior to 186. So if we could go to 187, please.
187 is a resolution regarding disposal of items at the landfill. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a discussion for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're back to item 186, please.
186 is a request by Leadership Rapid City Class of 2006 for donation of approximately 300 tons of asphalt millings from the City of Rapid City for the purposes of constructing a walking path adjacent to the Rapid City Humane Society. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. How much are we going to charge them for that?
Okay. Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The agenda item is a request for donation, and in accordance with the terms of the resolution you just approved, the council has the ability to authorize a donation of 300 tons of asphalt millings. So as I understand the motion, it is to donate the millings, no charge.
Okay, that's what I want to know. I just want to know if we were going to charge them for that or not. So thank you.
Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item 188, please.
188 is a resolution in support of the South Dakota Municipal League's policy to allow World Wide Web publications of council meeting minutes. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the work that was put into this resolution, and I also appreciate the addition of the language relating to allowing bidding of the minutes where appropriate when there are more than one newspaper of record. I think the fundamental question to ask as this winds its way through the legislative process is who owns the servers. I think having minutes published on the internet is a good idea. I think the real question is who owns and manages and maintains the servers. I think there's also something to be said for having a newspaper of record, so that way 100 years from now, if somebody really wants to look at the minutes for a council meeting, they can, and I think that's important from a historical record and a transparency perspective as well. So I think this resolution is okay. I am concerned about the lack of language relating to who owns the servers, but I think that's a discussion that can be had as this winds its way through the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I support the resolution. I think you might also question who owns the newspapers as well. They have private ownership. I think that the use of the World Wide Web is a good source. We all know that we keep our minutes here in hard copy at City Hall. They're available at the library and a number of other locations as well. And I'm not sure how long a newspaper lasts, but mine starts turning yellow after a couple weeks. So I think that probably they're preserved better at City Hall, and I think they'll last as long. But this gives us an option to do one thing, two things, or a number of things, whatever the community really wants, and make sure that we preserve that record. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Hurlbut, did you? I think I knocked your light out of sync here. So Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. And this was an item I brought forward, and I'm glad to see the be it further resolved language that allows for an alternative of competitive bidding. I think that could be an important way to both preserve the printing of minutes while saving city dollars in terms of the competitive bid, allowing for a lower price. I also would suggest that other entities be contacted, including most notably school boards. I just recently opened one day's version of the paper, and I saw, I think the first 4 pages of it were all minutes and various legal notices, and some of those, of course, are going to have to be published, and others, maybe we can do it electronically. So I hope other governmental and quasi-governmental entities that have to post notices are also contacted in the effort to at least explore alternatives. Thank you.
Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the resolution on the floor, but let me just make sure I understand that this is not something that's going to take place. This is something that we're asking the Municipal League, the South Dakota Municipal League, to get behind to encourage changing state law. Is that correct? Just a note to my colleagues then. The City of Rapid City, at every entity of staff, elected officials and all, are all pretty active at the Municipal League on policy committees. At those policy committees is where it gets ironed out, where we then give marching orders to the Municipal League to say, let's go forward and challenge this in state law or that in state law. So when those times and those assignments for committees come up at the statewide level, I would hope that members of the council would get involved to go and lend voice to what happens at those committees that really encourage the Municipal League to change state law. So I just hope that we remain active at that level and would encourage even more involvement.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item number 189, please.
189 is amendment to the contract regarding the staffing study, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. There again, just note you should have a document actually within your folders. I think that Mr. Tome passed out earlier, or at least put in your folders. With that, Mr. Tome.
This was brought forward from Legal and Finance without recommendation because the amended agreement was not available at the time, so it is available tonight. This is an extension of, kind of an extension of the compensation study. This is looking at staffing levels. We did a pilot with this and looked at 4 departments here at City Hall. We like the preliminary results. Want to extend it to all the departments citywide. We'll have the results back by the end of June, so hopefully you can use it as part of the budgeting process.
Okay. Further discussion. I don't see lights. Just a point of information. We did look at the City Finance Office, the City Attorney's Office, not growth management, Community Resource, and who was the 4th one?
Yeah, growth management.
And I'm sorry, who was it?
It was growth management.
Oh, growth management. Those were the 4. Just so you know, the addition or the additional funds required to do the study throughout the rest of the city is going to be absorbed within their current budget, so there is not going to be an additional request for additional money. And one of the things that I felt was important was the fact that we look at our staffing situation as far as manpower. And when Condrey assured us that they could actually get that information back prior to the budgetary process, I thought that was very, very important information, not only for myself, but also for the council as we look at additional FTEs. With that, motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the Public Works Committee items. Items Number 190, please.
190 is the Civic Center Edition sponsorship bidding. Motion be to acknowledge the discussion on that. Second.
We have a motion and second to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that I brought forward for more information and have been able to have numerous discussions with parties involved. I think the concerns that caused me to ask for more information were legitimate. I think there were questions and perhaps some misunderstandings or miscommunications that made it look to me like the process was being unfairly conducted. And in the final analysis, I think whether I may have preferred a different result, my real concern was fairness of the process. And I think I'm satisfied that the process, if imperfectly, was nonetheless fairly conducted. I think the concerns raised by Epic Outdoor Advertising are probably legitimate substantive matters, but from a procedural standpoint, I can't take issue with how this was conducted. And it's unfortunate that there were misunderstandings, but I have to defer to the good management that we are accustomed to from our Civic Center director as well as the Civic Center board on this, and I have to defer to their judgment on this issue. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'd like to thank the Civic Center Board for all their work on this. This is a issue that I see too as being a liaison to the Civic Center Board and seeing how the Civic Center Board works and having that committee assignment as the liaison. I have seen how the board works, and it really makes a difference to be at that committee meeting or that board meeting when you are a city council person to make sure the process is being done right and these people are being fair. And I think they're doing a great job. I think the people on this board have impressed me a lot with their decisions and the things they make. So I appreciate the concerns that the Caseys have. But I think at this point, from being a board member, I see the process working, and I would hope that it keeps working the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear a brief presentation from the Civic Center on this issue, and if in addition to a general brief presentation, I guess I have one question as part of that I would like to have answered, and that is relating to the revenue guarantee. Is there, with the proposals that are being, or with the proposal that the Civic Center is considering, what is the revenue guarantee for the city?
Okay. We're going to, since try to figure out exactly how to do this, because typically we don't do presentations right in the middle. We'll give you a little bit of latitude if you can just a very quick synopsis. And then I think I apologize, Sam, there was a second part to that question. I think that was.
I think it is typical to have brief presentations at a meeting, and I think it's appropriate to have one.
What was you had a second question, though? I want to make sure there was
the level of sponsorship revenue, the guarantee.
Thank you. Okay.
Before we get there, may I make
okay. Did you a point of order? Okay. Let's go to Malcolm Chapman, and then we'll come back to you. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
I'm not opposed to the presentation, but I think that if there was some presentation to be made by the Civic Center Board or anyone else for that matter, they should have put in a speaker request form. You know, now the Civic Center Board could get up and talk for 8 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever, and the concerned citizen here had 3 minutes. So I would just recommend that we use the timing light so there's a maximum of 3 minutes that the Civic Center Board would have to make their presentation.
Second. Okay. I'm not sure it requires a motion, but I think it's appropriate, so we'll go ahead and use the lights in all fairness to both sides. With that, Mr. Davis, if you could give us a quick snapshot, and also there was a question as far as guarantees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. There was a committee appointed by our board that comprised of General Manager Brian Maliski and board members Bill Waugh and myself. Our purpose was to look at the proposals and to judge them fairly. The intent of the RFP that was put out was to provide the new arena with state-of-the-art replay equipment, video replay equipment, at no cost to the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center or the city. The project is to be funded much like the project that we have in the big arena right now, with the businesses buying the advertising, paying for the equipment. The vendor would be responsible for purchasing the package of equipment and would turn the ownership over to the city upon installation. The vendor would then have the right to sell advertising on all that equipment. At no time would the Civic Center or the citizens of Rapid City have any financial responsibility to pay for the equipment or to pay off that loan. I think that's been a point of great misunderstanding. There was no tax money being used to purchase this equipment. The proposals were looked at from a couple of different directions, both the equipment package and the financial package. Although they were very similar in scope, they were very different also. There was a very important concern was whether it would satisfy the needs of the new arena. Additional consideration was given to the overall cost of the equipment and the time frame needed to pay off that loan. That was important because the commission revenue stream to the Civic Center is completely dependent upon the vendor being able to pay off, to service and pay off that debt. After several discussions with each vendor, it was the recommendation of the committee to vote and the board vote to finalize the contract with Daktronics Sports Marketing of Brookings. Weighing heavily on the decision was the overall cost of the package, about $4,000 for Epic, or excuse me, $4 million for Epic and about $2 million for Daktronics. Additionally, the overall appearance and usability of the equipment package was of great concern. Epic proposed 464 feet of 3-foot backlit signage above the electronic ribbon. The committee continually asked to have this removed or at least reduced. Continually, Epic contended that the traditional signing was required to make their financial package work. In fact, at one point they even increased the amount of those signs. The intent of the project always was to enhance the spectators' involvement and the spectators' experience at this arena. At no time was it the intent to fill the arena with advertisements causing a distraction or clutter like we so often associates with our city streets and roads. The conclusion was this signage would dominate the atmosphere of the arena and distract from the spectators. In answer to your question, Sam, as far as the revenue stream, if you look at the 20-year proposal based on each of their proposals and taking into consideration a $500,000 a year revenue.
Go ahead and finish your thought, if you would, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. The $500,000 a year revenue stream, the calculated revenue from Epic would be, and this is the total for 20 years, would be $114,642. The revenue stream from Daktronics is $4,897,923. This is the commission paid back to the Civic Center.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank
you,
Dave,
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dave, for the clarification. I might. So the Epic proposal was approximately $100 and some thousand of revenue to the Civic Center over the 20-year cycle versus $4 million.
Okay.
Okay. I guess the only other comment that I would like to make, and I'm not sure if a sealed competitive bid is possible in a situation like this, but I'd like to remind the council of the situation that occurred with the controls for the Civic Center when originally it was a sole source bid with Johnson Controls for the original expansion, and that had come back at $513,000. And then when the council chose to go, the Civic Center and the council chose to go to a competitive bid, that cost dropped to $158,000 for the same service. And I know that there's different dynamics involved, but can you help me understand, Dave, why a sealed competitive bid would not be the right answer in this situation?
Mr. Davis.
Thank you. My opinion is you're really comparing apples and oranges. In the one, you've got a hard product that you can physically bid that's certainly over the limit of an RFP. We're going to spend taxpayers' dollars, period. On the other hand, we've got a project that is not going to spend any tax money whatsoever, and in fact is going out to be the process of having outside businesses fund several $1 million worth of equipment that's being given to the Civic Center. Additionally, you've got this potential revenue source based on the sales that come from those advertising sales. It's not a hard-fixed thing. It's not something that we've got a building that's 300 by 200 and we can build it out of bricks.
Thank you. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
One more question, Dave. And I haven't had a chance to completely process the letter that we were given tonight, but one of the concerns raised is that the participants in the RFP, one of the participants who spoke earlier tonight, apparently didn't, or they said they didn't realize that they could end up competing with someone that they were sharing the information with. Can you address that, please?
Mr. Davis.
Possibly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me clarify what I understand. At no time were any of the parties involved directed to share intimate information about the operations of their business. Certainly, all parties were involved, just like the first time that we did it with Daktronics, who was the successful placer of this equipment 5 years ago in the Barnett Arena. We asked them at that time to go to Jim Sutton because there were advertising agreements already in place for the rodeo, and that we certainly wanted them to be able to work together. Now, it's my understanding that the parties from the hockey team and Epic went further than that, and they certainly shared information. My understanding is from both directions. That being said, no time were they told they had to, and if they chose to, I guess that's of their own volition.
Okay. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I look at this as a little bit differently. We're seeing this project come to fruition in a very positive fashion. This is just a portion of what's going to make this facility successful. You heard before a lot of people say you can't do it, it won't work. I think we're seeing that it can work and it will work. And I appreciate the work that the Civic Center Board has done here. I look forward to this being a very, very positive addition to the community. I'm excited about it. We're seeing well over 1,000 seats pre-sold for the ice, and we're seeing 9 out of 10 box seats sold now, only 1 remaining, and the last block hasn't been laid. This is extremely positive. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Alderman Johnson. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, I think it's appropriate to bring any item that council members want to bring up. But I just wondered if our city attorney could explain at least the roles or the relationship between the city and the Civic Center Board, or whose responsibility is it to sign contracts in this matter, and what's our role and what's the Civic Center Board's role in this?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rushmore Plaza Civic Center Board is a creature of the city's ordinance. State statute mandates that if the municipalities are going to adopt a municipal auditorium, which is the language of the statute, it's the Civic Center. If we're going to have a Civic Center, we've got to have a Civic Center Board to operate it. So even though we create the board by ordinance, state statute mandates it. By ordinance and by statute, the Civic Center Board is responsible for the operation of the Civic Center, and that includes the decisions to enter into contracts. So the authority to make the decision lies with the Civic Center Board. Now, the Civic Center Board members are appointed by the mayor with the concurrence of the council, and they serve at the pleasure of the mayor. So the council certainly has an oversight function there, but the ultimate responsibility on a day-to-day basis lies with the board, not with the council. So I hope I've answered the question. If not, please let me know.
Alderman Chapman, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Jason. Just a follow-up comment. I too would have concerns if the process weren't fair. I trust in everything that I've read from this that the process has been fair. I understand that decisions get made and somebody's unhappy with the decision that is made by whoever's making decisions at times, but that's going to always happen. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, but as long as the process has been fair to get us to that end, I'm comfortable with it, and I agree with Bob in this instance that from what I've seen and what I've heard, the process has been fair, so I'm comfortable with the decision that the Civic Center Board is making.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment with regard to the council's authority for oversight here. We are the ones who ultimately take the political heat for decisions made with this public facility, and so whether they have independent authority to enter contracts, that does, in my opinion, does not do anything to our responsibility to the voters to oversee a public facility. And so I respectfully disagree that we have no role in this process. And that's, I just wanted to make that one comment.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Two last questions for Mr. Davis, if you don't mind. The first is, were there other entities asked to participate in the RFP? Was it sent out to a number of possible vendors? And the final question is, do you believe that the process was competitive and fair?
Mr. Davis. So the first question is, through the RFP process, who did you submit or send the RFPs out to?
All RFPs are an open RFP. They are sent out basically to the world. It's like a bid process. It's open to anyone. So it wasn't inclusive or exclusive of anyone. An RFP process goes out that way. And as far as the second question
do you believe it was a fair and competitive bid? Alderman Quaker, is that a...
I think that both parties, it wasn't a bid, it was an RFP, clarification, excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
And I think that the proposals were both good ones. They both satisfied some needs. I think one of them satisfied more needs for the people of Rapid City, not only for today, but for the long haul.
Okay, Alderman Quaker, anything else?
So, Dave, when you say system-wide or sent out, was it sent out to
the world?
To the world. How was it sent out to the world? Was it?
Brian, I'm going to defer to you because I know you're the one that. My understanding is it literally is an open RFP, but let's be sure how that's handled, Sam.
Okay, Brian.
Brian Maliski, General Manager of the Civic Center. It's advertised in the paper as RFPs are required to be advertised. If we have anyone that we know of is interested in the product in the process, we specifically send it to them if they've requested for it to be sent to them. So in this process, there were two that we were aware of that were specifically interested. One was Daktronics, one was Epic, and their partners, Rock Advertising out of Phoenix, Arizona. And then we advertised it in the paper.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. I tried to get my light on before Mr. Davis went and sat down, but I didn't write the figures down, but can someone tell me what they were? The revenue from Daktronics was around $4 million over 20 years. 4.8 million over 20 years. And the Epic one was how much? 114,000. And if I may, Mayor, just ask this question of the Casey's.
Go ahead.
The information that they gave us, Mr. Casey brings up here that it should bring $700,000 a year to the city, and then lower down here it says $400,000 to the city and the taxpayers. So I'm getting conflicting numbers here, so can you respond to that?
Yep, and if you could just keep it to the question there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was hoping to get up here. I really would love to see that calculation, and I think it would be fair of him to show you that calculation. 700 is what we felt we can sell. 400 was a minimum guarantee, so if we sold nothing, 400 grand a year would come to you, minus commission of 30% average. So where he comes up with that is very fuzzy math, as George Bush would say, and I'd love to see that, and I think you guys deserve it. Unless, are you representing $4 million as your guarantee?
Okay, Ron, can you clarify your question? We need to.
Well, I guess my question would go back to Mr. Davis then. Did you divide your numbers or whatever equally on both sides to come up with that figure? I guess is the bottom line.
Mr. Davis. Getting your exercise tonight, aren't you?
I am getting exercise, thank you. I may not see you in the morning when I'm walking my dogs. I may, in fact, call Mr. Maliski up because he is our bean counter, but the bottom line is not the amount of revenue generated by the advertising. The numbers that I gave you is if you look at the commission structure, after the vendor pays their loan and takes their commission, and what is actually returned to the Civic Center as money to the city. And it was $114,000 from Epic over the 20 years. On the other hand, when you take that same calculation using $500,000 in revenue, could be more than this if there's more than 500,000 sold, but if you use 500,000, it's 4.8 million. Those numbers have been checked several times. The numbers are very accurate, and I'd be more than happy to have Brian or Tracy share the calculation. I asked the same thing. The numbers are so absurdly apart. I wanted to make sure these are absolutely correct, and they are.
Okay, Mr. Kroger, you still have the floor. Okay, very good. Further discussion? Further discussion? Okay, we have a couple more lights. Just, I think we need to make just a very short point here, and that is the fact that at last city council meeting, I believe our city attorney sent on a memo. If any of the council member, and I think the offer is still out there, if we run into a little bit of difficulty here because of the fact that there is not a signed contract, but if any of the council member needs additional information, including basically the hard numbers with the two proposals, I believe that the offer is still there from the Civic Center to sit down and actually present those to you basically side by side. Okay, with that, let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the latitude that you're giving me. I would like Casey to respond to that, if you would.
You ask a specific question, please.
The $100,000 is what they're saying is that one's giving $4 or $5 million, the other one's giving $100,000, and I would like to just clarify that from Casey's perspective, if I could, please.
Okay. Give her a try.
Okay, I didn't come with my math today, but basically, it's fairly simple. 700,000 a year is what we would sell in sponsorships. Our loan would be about 300,000 a year. That leaves 400 per year, minus the commission, which was varying, but it might be 28 or 30%. So you have 300 grand a year coming to the city right there per year. Our deal was a 400 guaranteed bottom, so I have no idea how he gets 114.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Okrepke.
I think we figured around 3 million or better.
Okay. Mr. Okrepke, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Let's go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. And I guess one of the questions I asked at Legal and Finance was because this was an ongoing negotiation process. If we're talking about information that's not public information already, I would just like someone to answer to me, is this information being, when the Civic Center Board holds a meeting and they're talking about negotiations, was these negotiations in executive session or these negotiations in a public meeting? Because if they were not in a public meeting, I'm not comfortable continuing to talk about this, and I'd like to end this conversation.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that the negotiations have been conducted by a subcommittee of Mr. Davis, Mr. Wan, Mr. Molesky. So that's less than a quorum of the board. They are taking place outside of the public sphere at this point. When the board acts to approve a contract, all that information will be available publicly. I don't believe the board has taken final action on that yet, but I wasn't at the last meeting, so I can't say for sure. Perhaps Mr. Molesky or Mr. Davis can find out.
Ron, you still have the floor, sir.
Well, I'd like Mr. Molesky to answer that question. Otherwise, I'm not going to ask any more questions. It seems fruitless.
Okay. Brian?
The numbers that you've been shared with so far, some of those were shared in public. We're starting to go beyond what was shared in public, and that it's still in a negotiation process. We have not signed a contract. We are currently negotiating. We are negotiating with Daktronics. We are not signed, and we are now going beyond what we've discussed in public.
Okay. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Molesky. With that in mind, I'd like to make a motion to continue this item for a period of a minimum of 2 weeks, or if that's long enough to, I mean, I don't see any reason to move on if we're talking about information that's not public knowledge. So, thank you.
Okay, we have a substitute motion and a second to continue. We will have discussion on the continuation motion only, please. Continuation motion only. If you do not wish to speak to the continuation motion, please turn your light off. We do have a light on from Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agreed with what Bob stated earlier that the council still has some role of oversight or some responsibility in this, and if I gave the impression that the council should not be involved, then that was the wrong impression to give. Having said that, I think our city attorney laid out for us whose role and responsibility is to sign what. So my question for my colleagues here would be, continue what?
Okay. Is that directed towards anybody specifically?
Yes, whoever made the, Ron made the motion and the seconder of the motion. So we're continuing what,
Okay.
for what reason?
Alderman Meifenbach, do you wish to answer the question?
I guess that'd be probably a good question. I'd be willing to take that motion back, vote on it, and just I don't see any reason to continue to talk about this. I think fuzzy math exists in all the calculations. When we take 700 from 400 from 700 equals 300, but we're going to guarantee 400. I think there's a lot of information here that, unless this comes forward again, I see no reason to continue. Thank you.
Do you wish to withdraw your motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. The motion, is there any objection to withdrawing the motion? If not, the motion is withdrawn. We are back to the original motion. Discussion on the original motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I just called the question.
Okay. The motion is to acknowledge the item, which is item number 190. There is no action on the floor. That is the motion, is just to acknowledge. Okay? Further discussion. Okay? The question has been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? Any objection? If not, the question is called. We are to the original motion, which is to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with 1 no from Alderman Bob Hurlbut. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item number 191, please.
Item 191 is Roosevelt Park Improvement Phase 3 project. Rebid, open April 29th, 2008. Move for approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Mr. Preston, did... Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 192, please.
192, you mean?
192, please.
Change order number 5 for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center Multi-Purpose Edition Bid Package 2 to Sampson Construction for an amount of $87,612. Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. We're going to go to Mr. Preston real quick here, and the reason for that, let me explain. Item 92 and 92A were split, so we have we actually have 2 separate change orders. And so the motion on the floor, I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? Mr. Preston, can you put the change order up? Do you have the ability to do that?
No, I do not. Can
Okay.
you explain to Mr. Green?
The change orders are actually in your packets. If everyone could refer to their packets, I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about here. Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Change order number 5 is for an addition of $87,612. This is a result of the club seating for the Hockey Association. We wanted to clarify that this is a cost not to the city. This is a cost that will be picked up by the Hockey Association, and it is for an increase. It will not affect the bottom line of the city's contingency for this project.
Okay, so the change order is for $87,612, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now let's go to our lights. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
And a clarification, this modification will make a difference in the profitability of both the Civic Center and of the hockey team. This is something being paid for by the hockey team that will make this facility even more successful. And I appreciate the hockey team and the Civic Center working together, again, to make certain that this facility is the real true diamond that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? There again, just for clarification, this is for change order number 5, and the correct dollar amount is $87,612. Just want to make sure everybody sees that, because on your hard copies it's saying $84,000. The amount of the change order is $87,612. Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 192, please.
192A is it's gonna be change order number 5 for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center multi-purpose addition to Sampson Construction for a decrease of $2,741.
You have a motion?
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second for a decrease, and I can't see that. What's the dollar amount?
$2,741.
Okay, very good. And for clarification, let's call this change order 5A, because otherwise you're going to have two change orders of the same number. Jason, is that appropriate?
I'm not sure. I think the prior item may have been designated as change order number 6. So if you call this one 5A, it will be distinct either way.
Okay. Is that all right with the motion maker?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, very good. We're okay. The motion on the 87,000 was change order number 6. This is change order number 5, so we're correct there. The reason I said that is Mr. Ellis read the other one as change order number 5 in the previous one. So, any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval of the change order for the deduct.
Decrease.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to bids. Item number 193, please. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 193 is for LaCrosse Street drainage improvements. We received the 7 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from RCS Construction Incorporated for the amount of $408,123.40.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second for approval and award of the bid to RCS Construction for a total amount of $408,123.40. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are item number 194. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 194 is for the Meade Street reconstruction Phase 2. This is East Meade from Elm to Birch and Elm from Florman to Talent. Staff, we received bids as listed, 5 bids. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Heavy Constructors in the amount of $2,723,673.85.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to Heavy Contractors for a dollar amount of $2,723,673.85. Any further discussion on that motion? Motion's for approval. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 195, please.
195 is the Cross Street Railroad crossing. Staff, the city received 3 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Simon Contractors of South Dakota Incorporated in an amount of $13,191.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and second for approval, awarding the bid to Simmons Contractors of South Dakota for a total dollar amount of $13,191. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That takes us through the bids. Thank you, everyone. We are on to items 195A. And Mr. Preston, why don't you stay there? This is discussion as far as a date for election canvases. There should be a letter, I believe, in everybody's folder. Is that correct? Or did you send an email out?
I sent an email out.
Okay. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, the primary election and the city election is June 3rd. We need to canvass the vote. We have 5 business days after that. We cannot canvass the votes prior to Friday, which would be June 6th. And did I get my date right there? Yeah. Okay. And the reason being is there's provisional ballots that they've got to figure into it, the county who's doing the election for us. So we could either do it Friday, sometime during Friday, or we could do it Monday. One of the times on Monday would be like right after agenda review, like at 8:45 on Monday morning.
Okay, so you're looking for direction.
Yes. I was just throw it out there. We would like to get a date selected. Those are our 2 suggested dates. And I'd like to see what...
Let's open it up for discussion. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
I just make a motion here to make it done Monday, right after agenda review.
Okay,
We'll set a time at 8:45 for media purposes.
okay. That is considered a special council meeting, so it will be needed to be notified. We have to have a quorum there. Okay, motion on the floor is to set a special council meeting to hold the election canvass on June 9th at 8:45 in the morning, correct? Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Karen Olson. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
I'm curious as to why only the morning is available on Monday. In order to canvass the election, I believe you need to have somebody from the finance office, and you need to have 6 council members. What would be the rationale that it must be in the AM?
Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. There is no rationale that it must be in the AM. The only thing I was thinking is that generally we have 5 council members there for the agenda review, so keep people from coming back. It certainly could be in the afternoon. I'm just trying to throw out some times that I think would work best for as many people as possible.
Okay, Alderman Johnson, you still have the floor, sir.
My suggestion is maybe there's only 5 people at council review because A, it's not legal to have any more, and B, because the other 5 are working for a living and aren't available at that time. I would think that maybe if you'd like to have the council members come and do this, I think that in the afternoon would be much better. Those are my comments. I'll vote against a Monday AM set, and I'm looking over at Alderman Quaker, and maybe he's got better availability than I do. I'm not sure.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion is specifically that we will do this at 8:45, and if the agenda review is not over with, you will stop that. I mean, if you're going to have people come in at 8:45, I certainly myself don't want to sit there until 9:28 waiting for agenda review to get done so I can go back.
I think
to
the
work.
answer to your question is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just note that we do have Public Works on the very next day at its normal time, and Legal and Finance the day after that at that normal time. And that I think that would be more workable. Is there any reason, Jim, why we wouldn't be able to wait until either Tuesday or Wednesday and just do it right at the beginning of Public Works or Legal and Finance?
Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. Tuesday would be okay. Wednesday would be outside of the time limit required for us to canvass the vote.
Is a substitute motion warranted?
I'll withdraw my motion then.
I'd like to offer a motion to set the special canvassing meeting right prior to Public Works on Tuesday, June 10. What date? Tuesday, June 10 at 12:30 p.m. right before Public Works.
Okay, we have we'll call it a substitute motion just to clarify, to hold a special council meeting at 12:30 on Tuesday, the 10th, for the election canvasses. Discussion on that motion, please. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Sam for that motion. I just think that I understand trying to get it done, but I think that we should set the council up to have the maximum attendance that we possibly can get. And I know 8:45 is probably problematic for those that are working and the other 5 that don't work. So, yes, thank you.
Can you define work? Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, someone who doesn't work, but I still will support. I will support the Tuesday alternative date. Seems to meet the greatest number of needs.
Okay, Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll support the Tuesday in light of, I do have a job. But I think with that in mind and with Mr. Johnson's comments, I believe he could bring the canvas.
Okay. Substitute motion on the floor is to set a special council meeting for June 10th at 12:30 to canvass the votes of the primary election. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 195B, Mr. Ellis, this is the Canyon Lake Dam quotes. This is on the short-term fix. 12:30.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At a previous city council meeting, the city council declared the emergency spillway, declared an emergency repair needed for the spillway of the Canyon Lake Dam, and an advertising authority of $250,000 was authorized for staff. Since that meeting, we have received 3 quotes for the repairs of that spillway. The 3 quotes were solicited from Core Construction Services in an amount of $43,984. Quinn Construction submitted a quote for those repairs at $58,360, and RCS Construction submitted a quote for $122,000, or $122,356.54. Staff would ask that these quotes be recognized, acknowledged by the council, and that the award be given to Core Construction Services in the amount of $43,984.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the award to Core Construction Services for $43,964. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I'm in support of the motion on the floor, and I would hope that the newspaper headline tomorrow doesn't say dam quotes, but in fact says spillway quotes.
Okay. Jeez, what a night. Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'm in support of Karen Olson's motion. Just kidding.
Because she works.
Thank you, Robert Ellis.
No, Deb does.
And I do work also. But thank you, Robert Ellis, for the work you've done on this. Wow, we went from a $200,000 quote to a $43,000. I can't read that far. 0964. Anyway, thank you for all the work you've done. Thank you to the people that got this done efficiently, and we appreciate everything you've done and the people that have worked on this. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a total now in terms of design and other for the temporary fix? Is that available? I see this is the quotes, but what is the total cost?
Mr. Ellis, can you answer that?
I can give you a rough estimate. We're probably right around $100,000 for design. There was a previous quote of $15,000 to do some piping, and then add that in with this $43,984. Put us around somewhere around $100,000 total.
So I just want to be clear that the temporary fix is not $43,000.
Right.
It's $100,000. And I did not vote for the what I considered as a $250,000 short-term fix, not necessary. I will say that $100,000 is a lot more palatable than $250,000, but I'll still vote against this. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm less objectionable, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Robert, knowing that the funding sources for the permanent fix are still being searched out, but it's it's going to be a challenge. Could you define for us once again how long can you define temporary for us in terms of how long this fix is projected and could last?
Mr. Ellis.
Absolutely. We are hoping that this would last 1 to 2 years. I firmly believe that we'll definitely get 1 year out of this. We also believe that the design of the dam reconstruction will take probably a year, if not longer. There will be a very intensive environmental review. We will be doing an intensive evaluation of determining, is this the correct place for that spillway, knowing what we know with this sinkhole. Maybe there's an alternate location for that. And we want to study this very, very thoroughly and make sure that the spillway and the dam that is reconstructed will last for many, many decades. So this repair will allow us the time to do the thorough investigation that's needed for the ultimate fix.
Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And the words dam and spillway have been interchangeably used, but just to make sure that I understand, the earthen dam itself is okay and is not the subject of the fixes or the studies. It's the concrete spillway that is the issue. Is that correct?
Mr. Ellis?
Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Alderman Quaker? If not, the motion on the floor is for approval and the award to Core Construction Services for $43,984. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to item 195C, and I just Bob Hurlbut information. Something about multiplying. Rabbits. Okay. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Yeah, my item was multiplying like rabbits. I have a simple request that I've noticed probably over a dozen rabbits in the last week or two, having never noticed rabbits in Rapid City much before, and I'm curious if, in fact, we have a developing rabbit population. I think it's probably a very simple request that perhaps is this cause for concern, because rabbits do multiply, and I believe in England they've had problems with rabbits. So that's a very simple request. I don't know if anybody wants to address that tonight, or if that's an item for a simple information item.
I think probably the best thing to do is probably if you could just drop an email, maybe to Jerry Cole from the Parks and Rec Committee, and see if they have any indication. They're probably as close to it as anybody.
Actually, I think Alderman Olson may have.
Alderman Olson, you know how to count rabbits?
No, but the Urban Wildlife Committee would be glad to assume responsibility for taking a look at this issue.
So let me get this. Now we're going to have a rabbit plan,
They
right?
are meeting monthly, and would be happy to look at this as well.
Okay, very good. Further discussion. Alderman Hurlbut, anything else? Let's see, we went through Olson. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I might suggest that maybe the South Dakota State Game Fish and Parks Department, who's responsible for wildlife, might come up with a census, somewhat they do as they do on deer. Just a thought. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Seeing no action required, the chair will just look for a motion to acknowledge.
Thanks for the levity.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and second to acknowledge. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 195D, I actually wrote down 2009 budget. Was that the same thing as we took up earlier? Right. Okay, so, okay, we have more down here. So would it be appropriate to table?
Move to table.
Okay, we have a motion and second to table. No discussion on tabling motions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 195E, public meetings. Was that you also?
That was me.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm bringing this to the council tonight because I have some increased concern about public meetings and transparency in government and what is happening here on the dais. I've seen an increased. Let me start with a little bit of a conversation I had with I was having a conversation with a constituent who had spent some time at one of our public works meetings in the near past, and his question to me was, "Do you council people have headphones that you talk to each other?" And my instant thought was, no, we don't have headphones that we talk to each other, which brought to light the fact that there's an increasing number of council people on this dais that are instant messaging each other during a public open meeting. And my concern is that we notice these meetings as public meetings, and we ask that the public come to these meetings to get information from the council people that are sitting here on the dais. I come to these meetings to get information from my colleagues that are sitting here on the dais. I've thought about this for a long time, and my concern is that this information may not be leaving the dais. We could virtually have a public meeting and virtually have the mayor run the meeting, and none of the council people on this dais say anything but aye or no. I think that information is not getting out to the public. When I come here to this meeting, my information that I like to share with the public is made public. It is a matter of factly put into the minutes in the newspaper. It is a matter of factly put on public broadcasting. It is a matter of factly put in the minutes of the meeting. And my concern is that with instant messaging, if we choose as a council to allow instant messaging or maybe any form of telecommunications to happen at this dais when we're having a public meeting and we have people in the audience who have no clue what we're talking about, I feel that we are skirting the true spirit of public meetings. I also believe that in self-governing a professional body. I'm hoping that tonight that our council can, and I will take anybody's input into this situation if they feel that it's not of concern then I'll take that and I'll weigh it out and I'll make a decision on it. And I'm not sure if this is going to lead to a motion. I'm hoping that it doesn't have to be made a motion or a resolution or an ordinance, but I do think that as technology moves forward and instant messaging, in my mind, is a way of skirting an issue of actually coming to the dais and telling the public via some source that we spend money on, a lot of money, is that these people are not getting the information that's happening here on the dais. I feel very wholeheartedly about this, and I'm looking for some input from my colleagues to say, if they feel differently, then that's fine. But I would at least look for some sort of self-governing regulation that we remove this instant messaging from this dais, and secondly, or we make those instant messages available on the overhead for public meetings. My third concern is the fact that the information that's already transpired that is not on public record at this moment. And I think that at Legal and Finance Committee on Wednesday, we directed the city attorney to maybe check into that and see if we are in violation of open meetings laws. And if that is the case, then we need to correct that. And I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm assuming it's probably not the case, but at the same time, I just can't understand in my mind why we would have an open meeting, notice the meeting, but yet not tell the people sitting in the audience or the people at home watching this on television what we're really talking about, what's really on our mind. So with that in mind, I'll leave it up to my colleagues to maybe have some discussion on it. And if it leads to a motion, I understand. And if it doesn't lead to a motion, that's fine too. I'm also a firm believer in that we can set the precedent here right now as we move in forward in technology and set that in motion. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Now, just for clarification, you're not ready to make a motion yet, okay?
I'm not ready to make a motion. I guess I'm believing that I think that as a council people, maybe if I'm wrong and I'm all wet, maybe somebody can tell me if there's another reason for having instant messages on this dais where we can't share it with the colleagues on the dais or we can't share it with the public, then I'd like to know why, and I will hold my motion, and that would be that.
Okay, very good. Well, let's see, we have 9 lights turned on here, so let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Ron. I have some concerns, if not the letter of the law, in terms of public transparency at a public meeting. The spirit of the public meeting law is being violated via instant messaging, or could be. And I think the possibility of creating a majority vote on any issue exists without having any of the dialogue made public. And so I agree with Ron that if we really are dedicated to public meetings and the spirit of public meetings, I think instant messaging and any other technology that would allow similar capabilities are inappropriate at this meeting. I recognize that you can whisper to your neighbor, you can step out in the hall, talk to a colleague, you could pass notes. But instant messaging takes that level of creating a quorum to a level of speed and unanimity that I think doesn't exist with any of those other more antiquated methods of forming a quorum. So I too agree with Ron, and at Legal and Finance, we'd suggested that Jason might begin looking at what kinds of appropriate legal action might be taken to make sure that we as a council fulfill our obligation to our constituents to make our discussions appropriately public. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. Ron brings up a good point, and the constituents have asked me that in the past. You know, when I first come on to the council, the first month I was sitting next to an alderman who I've seen some instant messaging asking for seconds and asking that alderman to make a message. And I was a little disturbed about that, but I didn't know what was going on. You know, the computer is a great tool. It's the 21st century, and it's a shame that one or two have to abuse it, and then we have to make a bunch of rules to have to follow around because one or two. And the thing that bothers me the most about that is, you know, I see a fly swatter running around town saying open government and backroom deals. What is that on the instant messaging when you're doing that? To me, that's doing what that fly swatter says, is making backroom deals and so forth. And so, you know, from my understanding, these computers are city property. At any one time, if we want, somebody can review these messages, find out what's going on, and review it to the council. I would have no problem with that at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put an item on our agenda for Wednesday's Legal and Finance. As we receive new computers, I thought that it was appropriate to have some discussion about computer use by the council, and I think part of this discussion came out of that. At Legal and Finance, Jason made a recommendation that we do a couple of things. One is to come up with a use policy for staff and elected officials of the use of the computers, and then the second one, he said that we could in essence police ourselves and establish some rules for electronic communications. A substitute motion was then made to direct staff to draft a resolution on appropriate use of city-provided computers for employees and elected officials. So I think somewhere in that discussion it got lost about the whole electronic use of computers, and mainly on the dais. So I don't think that the motions that we made at Legal and Finance reflect some of the spirit of the discussion that took place. And I think the discussion tonight is appropriate, and because we didn't make the motion at Legal and Finance, if it's not made, I think that we should make the motion to have the City Attorney's Office look into some use of electronic communications. I won't make that motion yet. I'll listen to what everyone else has to say. But I think it's an appropriate conversation.
Okay. Let's move on to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I have in the past, very occasionally, used an instant message from the dais. I have, in fact, tonight, neither received nor sent a single one. Occasionally, though, not unlike if I leaned over to the person next to me and asked a simple question, I will send an instant message. I have never sent one to more than one councilman. I have never received one from more than one councilman. There's no such thing as a quorum of instant messaging going around. Now, I can live without it, but it's just going to mean I'm going to have to get up and walk over to you, Ron, and ask you the question rather than IMing the question to you. But these are not... It's very difficult to be up here and continue to be listening while typing emails, but there's no quorum of emails going around. I have never gotten one from more than a single councilman, and I've never sent one to more than a single councilman. It is not fast, it is not easy, and it's not conducting business. It is simply asking a clarification type of question of another alderman that I would instead have to go walk over and ask, just like I could ask the person next to me. I can live without instant messaging, though, having said that. I just want it to be clear that this has not been a situation involving any kind of mass proliferation of instant messaging, nor has it been a case of any kind of business or any kind of quorum being involved from the dais. It is simply a quick communication means, just like if I ask the person next to me. So whatever the council decides on this, I am fine with, but I just, the implication that there has been any impropriety whatsoever is absolutely unfounded. And like I said, tonight I have not either received or sent one. I don't know if I did the last meeting. Maybe one meeting I'd have 2 or 3. You know, this is not a mass proliferation of behind-the-scenes communication among council. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've got mixed thoughts on this. On the one case that Ron makes a good argument that there could be some backdoor deals and things that could happen, you know, out of the public eye. But then I also wrestle with what kind of Pandora's box are we going to be opening here? I mean, I can't now reach over and ask Bob a question. What's the next step? We meet individually. Throughout the course of the day. We'll have coffee with each other, we'll have lunch or breakfast or whatever, and we'll talk about things. and it's just one or two or three people that get around together and just kind of hash out thoughts and ideas. I mean, we're supposed to be a policy-making body, and if we don't have a chance to visit with each other, then how do we make policy? And then you look at what's happening in other states like Florida. They've got a sunshine law there that it's prohibited that two council members can't speak to each other. How do you get anything done? And so if you say you don't want to have no more instant messaging, and if the council wants to go along with that, you know, I'm fine with it too. But be careful what kind of Pandora's box you're opening. I can't talk to Bob now. I can't meet anybody for breakfast. I can't meet anybody for coffee. And I'm not saying, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but these are Pandora's box you can open. And so if we're going to go this way, just think about what some of the where it can go from there. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this has been an important discussion, and I think it was summer of 2003 that the council got together and wrote its rules and procedures with the assistance of Linda Lee Viken and how meetings were conducted, and I think there's a number of things relating to the process of our public meetings in terms of keeping within the framework of the item that Alderman Whiffenbach placed on the agenda. You know, one, you know, there are products out there, including Microsoft Live Communication Server, that record all the instant message. There's also been emails that are routinely sent to a quorum of the council. Should those automatically be posted to a public website as well? We also have the issue of the 3-minute rule, which I think tonight, I think it would have been a benefit to have allowed the public to have had more than 3 minutes to speak. And I think that whispering back and forth to council members, you know, would also be an issue if depending on where the discussion goes. And we also routinely come out of executive session with a motion move to approve per the discussion in executive session. What discussion? We don't keep minutes of executive session. There's no record of what happens. So I think that it would be great for us to have a discussion, you know, at an informational meeting or a special council meeting within the next couple of months. Wait till after the new council has been seated, and let's go over the rules and the policies and procedures at that time, and that would be a great place to have that discussion, because I think there's a number of things that we can do to operate better. So I'm going to, for the sake of moving the discussion along, I'm going to offer a motion to ask the mayor's office to contact the council members and set up an informational, an informational meeting later on this summer. I don't know what topics or if those meeting topics are filled up for the informational meetings later this summer, but I'm just trying to move the...
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to actually take this to an informational meeting. Is that your motion, Alderman Quaker?
Yeah. Okay.
Just for point of clarification, the mayor's office actually does not set those. Those are actually set by the council president. And so we'll assume that the council president shall get that on the rotation to get that to the informational meetings, because the mayor doesn't actually have anything to do with the informational meetings. Is that all right with the motion maker?
That's fine.
Okay, just clarification.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and this is kind of a Pandora's box. I want to share with you what I believe is a much greater risk than any instant messaging. For years, I've avoided going to agenda review meetings. And the reason why, and my biggest concern is we talk about an open meeting. We have an agenda review whereby as many as 5 council people go and talk about every single item on the agenda. I think that's a great concern. And when I remind you that you may have as many as 5 people there talking about, again, every item on the agenda, whether things need to be continued or whatever else, you also have the mayor there. There are many things that we do that 5 people and the mayor can literally pass. The mayor can't enjoin something spending money. In my opinion, if you were that is more of a risk of conducting business
than anything that's done individually on a messenger system sent to one person. I think that's of great concern. Again, I've avoided doing that. That's number one. Number two, sidebar conversations. I personally have had more sidebar conversations, depending on who I'm sitting next to in any given year, than any instant messages that's ever crossed any line. I would wholeheartedly agree if there was a chat room going and there were actually a number of council people having a discussion. I'm not aware of any chat room where that has occurred. The other thing isn't, and I think we have all done this during meetings because we all try and get things done. If you send during, and I've done it tonight, if you send a email out and potentially it's CC'd to every council person, that has more of a risk than any one single. So you might have to prevent any emailing at all, whether it's a topic, yes or no, that happens. I believe that there is no more risk during a meeting having a discussion than there is away. At any time that I or any other council members or the mayor sends any communication behind the scenes with some item, I believe that is a much greater risk than any single conversation going on at an instant messaging. And then you ask yourself, when the councilmen leave and get a cup of coffee, if there's a discussion going on in the caucus room, does that then violate or have some suspect? We all know that we've gone out, and whether your intention was to discuss a subject or not, I don't, again, believe that is a problem. I believe that it's soundbite here. It sounds bad because there might be some discussion going on behind the scenes. But if you were to analyze the other potential, I believe that you would have somebody say, we're no longer going to have an agenda review, which originally did start for the staff and the mayor to say, do we have all the information? Do we have the information the council members need? I can't tell you how many times I've heard at a meeting that says, and I've said, well, why are we going this way with a particular subject? Oh, we decided at agenda review. We talked about this at agenda review. That is a much more grave concern of mine than any individual communication, whether it is by person or whether it is by an instant message. I think, again, if you analyze it, it doesn't rise to the level of any potential problem there. So I think that that's important for the council members, and it's important for right now, the media also to do. Again, intentionally, I've avoided agenda review. I've always not essentially liked it when some councilman said to me, well, we're going to do this differently because we had this discussion earlier and the other 4 or 5 aren't privy. And it's even more troubling and more upsetting when somebody moves to table something because they're privy to information that the rest of the council does not have. I found that somewhat irritating. But if you put it all on the table and you weigh all of those things, I don't think instant messaging rises to any one of the other levels of emailing and of the agenda review process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just reviewing the minutes from the Legal and Finance Committee, and there was direction to my office to prepare 2 things, as Alderman Chapman indicated. One is the appropriate use policy. The other is options for rules dealing with electronic communication. Those items will be coming forward at your next Legal and Finance Committee meeting, so I don't know that you need to take any additional action to ask me to do more tonight. If there's something else you want, you certainly can do that.
Okay. Let me just throw the question out there. I believe Alderman Quaker made the motion. Would you like your motion to stand, or would you like to withdraw your motion? You're not obligated either way.
Well,
let's go to Alderman Quaker, who was the motion maker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm certainly willing to withdraw. I haven't heard any opposition to it yet, but I think it's an important discussion that we have, and I'm willing to consider an alternative if it's suggested.
Okay. Let's go through, and then we'll come back to you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Okay, I've been listening to the discussion, and an open public meeting is not like an agenda review. It's not like meeting you for coffee. These meetings are based on final decisions. So if you are instant messaging, and as I hear truth and facts, I sat next to people and I read their instant messaging. So I know for a fact that people are changing votes with what they're saying. So if we don't believe, and you don't believe, the council members that are instant messaging are not doing anything wrong as a council member, I say take their computers of the council members and print those instant messages that have been in meetings in the last year on the website. That settles it all. It shows that we all are playing on a fair level playing field here, and that is nothing going on and nobody's doing anything in an open public meeting that is wrong. I'm willing to do that. You can take my computer at any time and you can do that. I feel that if it's all the same, and it's the same as talking next to each other or meeting during the day, let's post those instant messages and see if that's the same discussion. Opening Pandora's box, this is Pandora's box. I have been watching council members sitting next to me typing. It's annoying. I have said this before. Other council members had said this before. Could you quit? We don't think this is in violation of an open public meeting, but we truly believe if the public knew you were doing this, they would not agree with it. Let alone the audience member can instant message me anything they want during a public meeting, and that's wrong. So it's not just council members, it could be audience members doing the same. So no more than speaking next to someone next to you is not the same. Sounds bad? It is bad. If you believe in open government and transparency, it's very bad. It's no less and no more than what we're saying to publish the minutes and make it fair. Again, I'm willing to give my computer up. How many on this council are willing to give their computers up, to give them to the computer people to print what has been on the instant messaging for the last year to say that nothing's going on? And if that needs to be a motion and to be added to it, I'm okay with that. Because I know I haven't been doing that. And I believe in an open public meeting, it's not right. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to, I want to look here real quick. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion on the floor is to have a special informational meeting regarding this issue.
Yes.
And I can support that. There's no question that instant messaging has taken place up here. Everybody knows it, and it's been a concern to a number of council members for a long time. And to me, there's no question some of the stuff that's been taking place is probably borderline of what should be being done up here. So along with all the other comments that have been made, there's a lot of things I think we can discuss and we need to discuss. But you know, I guess I'll leave it at this. I can support the motion on this on the floor, and I guess at any point in time, Jason probably doesn't need it, but you have the authority to take my computer or check into my files at any point in time that you want. So with that, let's support the motion on the floor to have more discussion at a later date, and let's move on. Thank you.
Okay. Just so you know, we've gone through the entire list. Everyone on the council has had one opportunity. Just a reminder, the motion on the floor is to take this issue to a special basically to an information meeting to be basically put in the rotation within the next couple of months. And so if we could just, I think we've had pretty good debate, so if we can try and, if possible, limit that discussion to taking to the informational meeting. With that, Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to do what you ask us to do. But I want to make a couple of comments. I disagree with taking this item to an information meeting. An information meeting is where the council gets information on something. It's not designed where we sit around and hash out issues. So I would question, how does that information meeting, from a facilitated standpoint, how does that look, and how do we all play a part to get somewhere other than where we are today? The second comment I'll make about that is that we've had information meetings almost every month, and we get half the council to show up. So I don't understand the point of having an information meeting when half the council is going to show up. We've tried to do quarterly retreat meetings or something. We've had a couple of them since I've been council president. One specifically to look at how the council is functioning, the rules and policies of the council, and we didn't get everyone to show up at that meeting. So I question what we get out of this when we move this to a different meeting. I've had concerns since I've been on the council about email, and I've talked about this, And as a result, I don't respond when the council group gets something from the public. I don't respond because the council could, in effect, set policy online, and I don't think that that's right. So I rarely ever respond to emails from the public for that reason, because all 10 council members can be engaged in that discussion and could set policy. Just about the agenda review meeting, I think the agenda review meeting is a good meeting to have. That's a public meeting. The press is notified. I mean, they can come to that meeting if that's an open meeting. It's no different than having 5 council members sit on the CIP committee, or 5 council members sit on the floodplain committee, or 5 council members sit on the .16 committee. So I don't share the same concerns about how many council meetings come to agenda review. I do share the concern with my colleagues up here about information going down this dais, and I do, and it's not just about leaning over to someone saying, I don't understand an issue. I too have seen where other council members are asking for someone to vote a certain way. That then, in my opinion, violates the spirit of open meetings. To lean over and say, well, I don't get this, or what page is that, or where are you on the website, is not the same in asking someone. And that's what's taking place sometimes on these instant messages, asking for votes, asking for seconds to motions, and asking support about things. So I think it's very appropriate to have Jason come back to us with some start of a conversation, or by ordinance or resolution, about use of computers, private use of public computers, and how we electronically communicate messages. I think that's appropriate, especially as we move on. You know, you could do that on your cell phones. You could do it anyway. So how we use information up here. The last point I'll make is I know a couple of council members have asked that you can take my computer and you can do this and look at it. Just a side note, council members, we just got new computers. We just got new computers. So taking these computers and looking for instant messages doesn't mean anything. Those old computers have probably been scrubbed, and that information is probably gone. So I don't want to point fingers and say, let's get them and start. I think from this point forward, how we conduct our business is what we're trying to get to. I will not support the motion on the floor to take this to an information meeting where half the council shows up.
Okay. Let's go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try to keep it to the motion on the floor. And I too will not support the motion on the floor to take this to a public information meeting where half the council shows up. When I brought this up, I really thought in my heart that our council was professional enough to not to digress the conversation to, well, leaning over to your partner is having violation of an open meetings law. Public meetings and meetings where I go have donuts with Miss Olson or have breakfast with Mr. Chapman are way different than having a public noticed meeting where I invite the public, my constituents, who believe in me, who voted me in, who trust me, to give them the information from my heart and from my colleagues on this council, to share it with them openly and publicly. I state on each motion that I speak on, openly and publicly, my opinion. I don't hide it on an instant message. I'm here to tell you. I cannot believe that we digressed the conversation to meetings that weren't public meetings. We're talking about purely public meetings. We're not talking about me going out dancing with Ron Kroger. That's not the deal here. We're talking about a public noticed open meeting where there is a quorum involved and where the public has expectations of their professional council people who they elected to give them the facts in a transparent manner. And I'm sorry, but I'd like to make a substitute motion that we eliminate instant messaging from the dais. If someone would second that, I'm not sure.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, which is, let me think about this. Is this a substitute motion or second substitute motion, Jackie? Okay, so this is the first substitute motion, and the motion is, and I'm going to see if I can help you here, direct staff to establish a policy to eliminate instant messaging from the dais. Okay, very good. Everyone clear on that motion? With that, discussion on that motion, let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we might be moving in the right direction, but I think you need to include everything. I'm going to move as an amendment to prohibit emailing during a city council meeting and also to prohibit discussion with your seatmate, because I think that's inappropriate as well. If I can get a second, I think it's worth discussion.
Is there a second?
Sure, for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend. The discussion will strictly be on the amendment, nothing else. And I'm going to hold, we're starting to, I think, spend about half an hour on this topic, so I'm going to hold us very close so we can come to a resolve on this. So anybody who wishes, I'm going to look to ask the question. Anybody who wants to talk to the amendment, leave your light on. If you're not, please turn it off. Okay, with that, let's go to Alderman Johnson. Did you have any other comments? You still have the floor, sir.
I just wanted to make one comment. I proposed 2 additions. I want you to remember that instant messaging is an electronic message. Emailing is an electronic message. And remember that the emailing that goes on up here generally goes on CC to every council member on a lot of cases. That should be banned as well. So I just would ask you to support that amendment.
Very good. I will ask the council to try and keep their comments fairly brief on the amendment discussion, if we could, please. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an absolutely fascinating discussion, and I will enthusiastically support both the amendment and the motion on the floor, as long as I do not receive any criticism the next time I question 8 council members going to New Orleans. And I'm serious when I say
Okay.
that. I would also like to note that this particular item was not on a published agenda. It was brought up right before the meeting, and perhaps it would be better so that we can think this through and have something in a written resolution form by the city attorney. Perhaps it would be better to continue this back to Legal and Finance and Public Works. I'm not going to offer a second substitute motion, but I think that may be advisable.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder, the discussion will be on the amendment only. Any discussion other than that will be ruled out of order immediately. Karen Olson.
There's a level of civility that needs to be a part of this discussion. And if this amendment, I think, takes a step beyond being civil with those that are working with. I mean, asking someone for a cup of coffee and those kinds of things which is what this, I think, leads to. So I will not be in support of this amendment to the original motion.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will not be in support of this motion or any motion that I've heard so far tonight as it relates to this item, because I think the proper motion was the motions that came out of Legal and Finance to globally ask the city attorney's office to come back. Now, I haven't heard anyone say anything about text messaging, and so is that not, so I can text message, because all we've talked about is email and IM. So I think we're getting beside ourselves a little bit here. I think the proper motion is what came out of Legal and Finance. It's there in the city attorney's office. Let him come back, or let them come back with something, and then we have something to at least work from and chew on before we start to try to make these motions from the dais like this.
Very good. Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Could someone just clarify for me what's the difference between an instant message and an email? I mean, I don't do it. I'm naive here, but I'd like to know what the difference between the two is.
Okay. I'm going to look for a guinea pig here. Jason, give it a try. What's your definition between an instant messaging and an email?
I'm really going to be stretching here, so please don't take this to heart without a grain of salt. I believe an email would be defined as something that is sent to a specific address that belongs to a specific person that's publicly available, for lack of a better way to say it. An instant message is a system whereby 2 or more people interact almost on a conversational basis by typing in the conversation into a chat box or some other software system. And forgive me if that's terrible, but that's the best I can do on the fly.
Okay, Ron, anything else?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. This is quickly spiraling into ridiculous, in my opinion. I am going to, and I think Malcolm's right, I wish he would have made it his motion, but I'll make it my second substitute motion to continue as discussed by Malcolm and directed by Legal and Finance to allow the city attorney to explore options and come back with a report to council.
Okay.
And I hope somebody will
We
call
have
the
a
question.
second substitute motion and a second, and I'm going to turn to Jason Green. We have a pending amendment on the floor. Is it appropriate to offer a substitute motion with a pending amendment?
I believe you need to dispose of the amendment
And that's
first.
why I asked the question. Okay, so just for point of clarification, we need to dispose of that, so at this point, I need to rule that out of order. We'll vote on the amendment, then you can come back and offer your second substitute motion again. Sorry about that. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm not in support of the motion on the floor. And, you know, I've continuously said that it's a sad day when we have to sit here and make rules and regulations with the actions of one or two or a few. And that happens all over the place, not just here. I think it brought great awareness to this council what's going on and so forth, and I think everybody's going to work hard not to do it anymore. And it may happen, but I mean, as far as it's been brought out in the open. I'm willing to wait for Jason's report and then go from there, and that's where I stand on it. But I just don't want to make a bunch of rules for the actions of a few. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There again, just a reminder, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the substitute motion. Okay. With that, let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Well, I would yield the floor to Ron Weifenbach.
Well, I actually have someone else in queue, so I'm going to go to Alderman Johnson, and then I'll come back to Ron Weifenbach if you want to turn your light on, please. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Frankly, I think this should be continued. However, at the risk of removing my amendment, I think it's too great. And I want to explain the amendment again, and I want to talk a little bit about the difference between instant messaging and emails. Instant messaging is generally done from one person to another. It involves two people, just as a conversation aside. If this were a chat room, I would say we have a major violation going on. I don't believe anybody's in a chat room. If I sent an email right now, and most of my emails are CC'd to the entire council and the mayor, most of them are. You could examine it and you'd see the same thing, and you would as well in your box. If I send an email right now to the council, all 10 council people would receive that within a matter of a couple of seconds with a high-speed internet access here. That is a communication that goes immediately. Now, most people don't do that. However, I know that we do conduct business whenever we have time. We all are busy people. A lot of us have jobs and a number of things, responsibilities, so we try and be as efficient as we can. And tonight I have emailed, and it has nothing to do with what's on the agenda, but that in itself is the email system is a instant messaging system on steroids, because it does contact all 10 people. If you're going to eliminate instant messaging, which is amongst one, it would only make sense to eliminate the instant messaging on steroids, which is the email system, which goes to 10 and immediately. So I just want to make sure everybody understands and realizes that, because we've kind of picked on one form of communication. And I believe Malcolm was right. There are so many ways to communicate, not just leaning over to your partner, but by the cell phone and by a number of things. I think that it should globally be done. But I'm going to vote for the amendment for fear that somebody will pass some resolution that says you can't instant message and forget about the email system, which is instant messaging on steroids, worse than anything. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And it's my intention, we got about 5 minutes to 10. We've been talking about this single topic for about 45 minutes. So let's see if we can wrap this thing up in about next 5 minutes. Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr.
please.
Mayor. I wanted to make sure that Alderman Johnson's amendment is clarified, because he's mentioned emails and instant messages, but his amendment suggested that you can't talk to your partner who's standing right next to you. Public open government's been in open for hundreds of years, since the beginning of time. talking to your neighbor is expected within the public forum. It's not expected to have conversations that other people aren't aware of. I'm not going to support the amendment, and if the amendment fails, I would either withdraw my amendment or return to the Alderman Chapman's suggestion of allowing it to go through the process as long as Jason Green is agrees with the fact that we can resolve this with, or maybe come through with a resolution. I was hoping that we would not need a resolution. I was hoping that we could self-govern ourselves, but obviously that's not going to happen, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
On the amendment, if we want to eliminate emails, I'm fine, but I do see a big difference. And it said, basically emailing is between two people. It's not a chat room. But I'm going to tell you again, it wasn't between two people. It was between at least 4 people, because I was reading the emails, or I was reading the instant messages. So it's not the same thing. It's an open public meeting, and let's get that straight. If we want to take, which Malcolm is saying, which Bob is saying, let's take it all at once. Let's have that discussion at Legal and Finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I would call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? The question on the floor is the amendment, which Jackie could check me on this. It is to eliminate emails, instant messaging, and talking to your seatmates. Is that the amendment? Okay, very good. Question has been called. No objection, calling the question. We immediately go to that question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please. That's all right.
Johnson.
Aye.
Adcock? No. Hurlbut.
No.
Krupke?
No.
Chapman?
No.
Wyffenbach?
No.
Olson? Kroger?
No.
Quaker?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Okay, motion fails on an 8-2 vote. We are back to the original motion. Is that correct? Or was it a substitute motion? Okay, substitute motion, and that was, can you restate that?
That was to direct staff to prepare to eliminate instant messaging from any public meeting.
Okay, everyone clear on the motion? That motion is to direct staff to come back with recommendation to eliminate instant messaging from any public meeting. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. Remember what I said. We're going to try and get this done by 10. So let's go to Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to make a substitute motion, as I alluded to earlier, to allow the city attorney to come back with options and not limited to simply instant messaging, and that we can then have further discussion through Legal and Finance and Council from there.
Okay. We have a second substitute motion and a second. And I'm going to see if I can, and that is to direct staff to report back on the issues that were brought up during Legal and Finance and Public Works. I'm sorry, at Legal and Finance. I think was that the intent of your motion? Okay, very good. Further discussion. Ron Wyffenbach, did you have any further discussion? No. Okay. Motion. Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Just real quick, Mayor. Is there any precedence from any other communities? What's anybody else doing here? I mean, we shouldn't have to be reinventing the wheel, or, I mean, is there any precedence that's available for, you know, either through the National League of Cities or the ICMA or whatever? I mean, there should be some kind of policies that other people are using, and why?
Okay. Jason, do you know, or can you report that back to us?
That'll be part of my report. I can tell you I'm pretty certain there's no South Dakota law on point, and the rest of the nation, I think, is all over the board.
Oh, I missed that.
The rest of the nation, I believe, is all over the board on where they're at with policies. So.
Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? Second substitute motion is to direct staff to bring back the recommendations as per requested at the Legal and Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 195F, Education of Council.
The benefit of education for council members.
Okay, benefit of education from council. Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I have some stuff I want to read here, if I could. The benefit of education for council members. Attending different conferences give your elected officials an opportunity to do hands-on learning and networking in a short amount of time. Yes, it is possible to get all the information you need from books and the internet, but not the knowledge and inside track of experience from people who have already gone through the same processes. How many times do you ask a friend or neighbor for advice that you could just as easily looked up yourself? How is this different? I'm working hard attending all 16 committee meetings I am assigned to, getting all the information I need to make informed decisions for the citizens of Rapid City. I and several others on the City Council do not have a degree in politics, but we are fully willing and capable of learning what we need to do to get things done right. We see travel as an investment, not a waste of taxpayers' dollars. To be more effective, investing in your elected leaders is just like what you do when you spend money investing in your kids' education. The key is that with any job, you need to always be willing to learn new things and be able to communicate them to the public. Saving taxpayer dollars is investing in the education officials you elect. They do this everywhere. That is why there's a National League of Cities. It's part of our job. Other communities look to us as an example for how things are done, like we initially learned about the downtown revitalization project on the New Orleans trip from people who did the same thing, and we applied it to Rapid City. As a result, we changed the state law on sidewalk cafes to help revitalize our downtown area, accomplishing one of our city council goals. In this case, the new law can also be used by other cities. This is only one example of the application of knowledge gained through the investment of travel that we have accomplished. You can elect professional politicians that have degrees in city administration, or may have some knowledge on how to run a city, but don't know how to apply that knowledge or just don't care. Or you can elect representatives from the public that actually work hard to give back to the community, that may need additional education in correcting procedures to get things done. Doing this job is an educational experience, and hands-on learning is the best approach. I and other city council members do not have formal education in politics, but isn't that why you elected us? You're tired of the professional politicians doing the same old thing. I would love to have even more inexperienced citizens elected that are willing to get things done instead of those that are in pursuit of political power and could care less about doing what's right for the people of Rapid City. Is this not evident if you look at the council members and their attendance at their assigned committee meetings? How does spending $2,100 this year on travel compare to city council members that get paid $1,000 a month to attend assigned committee meetings but do not attend? Where are they getting their information to make informed decisions for the citizens of Rapid City? I would suggest that the citizens need to have information on weekly attendance of committee meetings by council members so they know what is going on, versus those who sit up here with cameras rolling having private conversations during open public meetings. I guess they already know everything, or they must get their information off the internet and don't feel the need to attend meetings prior to voting. You tell me, which is the better investment for taxpayers? I suggest a penalty, like a dock and pay, if you do not attend your assigned committee meetings. If you cannot fulfill the obligations to the citizens of Rapid City, then don't run for office or resign your position. If we want to save taxpayers money, then maybe we should only have one council person from each ward, because in my ward, only one council member is attending the assigned committee meetings. Let the taxpayers decide. I believe that the application of knowledge gained is the foundation for which all good decisions are made, and a good investment of taxpayer dollars. My number one suggestion for transparency and open government is the attendance record of all council members or their signed committees meetings should be published.
Hey, Deb.
Number two.
Deb, I don't mean to interrupt.
Sorry.
We just need to make sure that we
I apologize.
don't take any.
I apologize, sir.
Okay, if you could just.
I also suggest that the Rapid City Journal and the Rapid City Weekly News actually print prior to the election an attendance record of each council member's assigned committee meetings. This will enable the citizens of Rapid City to make a more informed decision on how many of their taxpayer dollars are being invested and when it is time to vote. Why I brought this up is committee meetings. I brought this up because I'm in 14 committee meetings because I show up and because I get things done. Now, if my other council people
are not doing this, then that should be brought out to the public. That's why I wrote this. I have a job too. Everybody has a job on this council. Some better make it than others. Then call that person if you need a substitute. But do not expect people like me and others on the council that do attend our meetings to attend yours, plus be added to more lists, because we will be there for those meetings. That's what I'm asking today. We need to change policy so I don't have 14 meetings and the other person has 6 because they know I show up. If we need to change policy, I'm willing to bring this back to the Legal and Finance. Thank you.
Point of order.
Okay, and your point, sir.
Simply that this is a prepared statement that is impugning members of the council as essentially a campaign speech, and I think it's out of order.
I'm not running.
Okay. Okay, further discussion. Point taken. Okay, further discussion. And, okay.
I'll be brief.
Okay, very brief. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think council members should have the opportunity to say what they think and what they feel, if they want to do that from the dais. But I would just recommend to council members that we don't start to personalize things and talk about individual council members or seatmates or what have you. I would question if that's in the best interest of the council, but if we want to throw ideas and issues out on the floor, by all means do so without personalizing it.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Alderman Chapman. It's appropriate to certainly share your views, but we have to be very careful, because if you start throwing out or basically narrowing it down or basically getting into a debate up on the council with another council member, that I don't believe is appropriate. I think general comments are fine, but when you get to specifics about a specific council person, that is inappropriate. Let's go to anything else. Alderman Adcock?
Just one more thing.
Very briefly.
I apologize if I made that personal, but I take it personal, city council members, when I'm having to work and do more committees because I show up. That's all I'm trying to say here. It should be fair to both city council members to have the same amount and put that directly to it. I'm sorry if that sounded personal, but I am getting tired as a city council person of having to be called up to a meeting that I'm not even supposed to be in. I wasn't supposed to be at the meeting the other day. They needed quorum. That makes it 15 meetings a month. So I'm not trying to make it personal, but you need to show up for your committee meetings, and to me, they are very important.
Okay.
I didn't make it personal.
Okay. If there is, I assume this was a discussion, there's no action, unless there's other discussion. I'll give anybody else opportunity. Any other discussion? If not, we will move on. Okay, we are on to the open public hearings comment period. This is items we're on to the public hearing items 196 through 243, and also including items 248, which we added to this section at the beginning of the meeting. So with that, the chair would look for a motion to open the public hearing comments, item 196 through 243 plus 248.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So we are on to the continued public hearing consent items. We're on to items 196 through 230, and the chair would ask if any items are to be removed. Items 196 through 230. I do have item 226 to be removed. Any addition? Please turn your light on. Marcia?
Also 225A, which was also added to the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. 225A and 226. They are related items. Okay, any additional items to be pulled from the continued public hearing consent, items 196 through 230? If not, the chair would look for motion for approval of items 196 through 230, with the exceptions of 225A and 226.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to 225A, which was added, and that is authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign a warp, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, that would be, I believe, Lloyd, is that yours? Why don't you read that in, if you would, please?
225A?
Yes, do you have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a variance to the subdivision regulation to waive the requirements to install sewer and sidewalk along East North Street has been submitted in conjunction with the preliminary plat to create 2 lots. A stipulation of approval of the variance subdivision regulation requires that the applicant sign a waiver of right to protest any future assessment of the improvements. The document also requires signature of the mayor and the finance officer. Move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second for approval. Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
Actually, we already acted on 225. 225A is authorization for the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest and assessment. And it is related to 226, which is recommended for approval with stipulations.
Okay.
So I believe the motion on the floor is out of order because it has
Right.
already been acted on.
So the chair will rule the motion on the floor out of order and ask Lloyd for a motion to approve, to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the warp.
That'd be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to 226, please.
It's a request by Centerline Inc. for Action Development Inc. for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install sidewalk, sewer along East North Street and install sewer along portions of Century Road as per chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. This is located at the intersection of East North Street and the future East Anamosa Street. And a move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a
With
second
steps.
approval.
Yeah.
In discussion on that motion. Okay, motion is for approval with stipulations, correct? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item 231. Actually, the chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing, items 196 through 243. Just a reminder, we did have a speaker request form on item 231 from Sandra Swanson. What is it? Oh, Swan. So this would actually be the appropriate time. I don't want to pass you by, so if you wanted the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to be present. I'm Sandy Schwann, again, chairperson of Summer Nights and class representative for Leadership Rapid City Class of 07. And I just wanted the opportunity to be here in case anybody had any questions about our application for a liquor license.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, the chair would look for a motion. I don't have any other additional speaker request forms. The chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing on items 196 through 243 plus item 248.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public comment period. All those any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the consent public hearing items. This is items 231, 232, and also in addition 248. The chair would ask if any of those items are to be removed from the consent calendar. How about 248? Okay, 248 is going to be removed from the consent calendar. Any additional? Let's go to Jim Preston. Whoop, is that what you had? 248. Okay. Any additional items to be removed? Any additional? Chair would look for a motion to approve the consent public hearing item calendar, items 231 and 232.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of 231, 232. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 248, please. Can you just, Jim, can you read that in or give us a recommendation?
You want me to read it in, Mayor, too?
Sure, why don't you, and then give
Okay.
us a recommendation.
Under alcohol licenses, Laurel Hawkins doing business as RAXX Billards. A request for a retail on-off sale malt beverage license, no video lottery. I was asked to contact her because this has been continued a number of times, see what her wishes were, and she did advise me telephonically that she would like to withdraw this license request.
Okay, Chair would look for a motion to acknowledge the applicant's
Table it, don't we?
request to withdraw. Jason, is that appropriate motion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the request of the withdrawal of the application. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That is the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We are on to the non-consent public hearing items. Item 233, please.
It's a request by Oshie Engineering for Stony Creek Development for amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from planned residential development with 4.8 dwelling units per acre to office commercial with planned commercial development. This is located south of Cantron Boulevard between Bent Drive and Nugget Gulch, and move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion, second for approval with stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 234, please.
It's a request by Jamie Carpenter for an amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change land use designation from neighborhood commercial to medium-density residential. And this is located at 4144 Haynes Avenue, and move to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice the applicant's request. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 235, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest future assessment for the installation of curb gutter street light conduit along Cantron Boulevard, to install curb gutter water street light conduit along US Highway 16 Service Road, and to install sidewalk along both sides of Cantron Boulevard and US Highway 16 Service Road as they abut. And this is located Highway 16 south of Cantron Boulevard. Motion would be for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 236, please.
It's a request by FMG Inc. for TLC Investments Inc. for the variance to subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, and street light conduit along Cantron Boulevard, to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, water, and street light conduit along South Dakota Highway 16 Service Road, and variance to the waive the requirements to provide sewer service to the property as per Chapter 16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located west of South Dakota Highway 16, south of Cantron Boulevard. Motion be approved with revised stipulations.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with revised stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 237, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer sign waiver to right to protest future assessments to the installation of curb, gutter, water, sewer, street light conduit, sidewalk as it abuts the intersection of South Dakota Highway 44 and Radar Hill Road. Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 238, please.
Request by Spurlick Consultant Inc. for TK Aggressors Investment LLC for variance to subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, pavement, street, light conduit, sewer, water along Dunn Road and Radar Hill Road as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located southwest of the intersection of South Dakota Highway 44 and Radar Hill Road. Motion be to approve in part with stipulations and to deny in part in accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve in part and deny in part per the Planning Commission's recommendations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 239, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest future assessment for the installation of pavement along the alley rights of way as they abut Track C, and this is located 3401 Sturgis Road. Move for approval.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 240, please.
Is a request by Davis Engineering, Inc. for Larry P. and Terry Silverwatch for the variance subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light conduit, water, sewer, and pavement, and waive the requirements to provide additional right-of-way as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and this is located at 3401 Sturgis Road. Move for approval with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 241, please.
Is a request by DDI International for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light conduit, water, sewer, and pavement along Interstate 90 as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located adjacent to the north side of England Street. Motion be to approve in part with stipulations and to deny in part without prejudice as part of accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendations.
We have a motion and a second to approve in part and deny in part per the Planning Commission's recommendation. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 242, please.
A request by DDI International, Inc. for a variance to the subdivision regulation to waive the requirements to install sidewalk along the north side of East Mall Drive and Dakota Craft Drive. And this is located north of East Mall Drive and Dakota Craft Drive. Motion be to deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for denial. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see, 243, please. 243.
Thank you. 243 is the second reading of ordinance number 5380, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal rezoning the within described property as requested by Bosch Engineering for Stony Creek Development for rezoning from low-density residential district to office commercial district, located south of Catron Boulevard between Bent Drive and Nugget Gulch Road. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the bill list. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. The bill list totals $5,566,347.13. There are no additions or changes.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second of the bill list totaling $5,566,347.13. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Executive session, Mr. Green. No executive session.
Move to adjourn.
Wow. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Alderman, any discussion at all?
It's not 10:30 yet. Let's keep it going.
We can't get out of it before 10:30. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.